Welcome, my friends and enemies. Glad you are here. Today we have the Council of Light. Technically, everyone's here, but Arterian is not able to join us as his normal location due to his internet, but he will join us in the chats. So you can interact with him there, as well as us in the chat, as well as just we'll be chatting ourselves. So you can unmute yourself, Sage.
Well, Tyrion will be the watcher in shadows for now.
Just so no background noise comes in, I just...
Bark, bark. But yes, this was a little bit of a surprise, I guess, theme that I kind of thought about, and it's kind of a game, but it's not really a game because there's not really points, there's no prizes, and you don't win anything. But it's a game as an entertainment. So we've all kind of asked the question at some point. I should say, hail, Matt. At some point when we watched Wheel of Prime, or didn't, if you were lucky enough to survive that debacle, something about, was there actually anything in the show that was in the books? And I think most of us intellectuals know the real answer to that, but I wanted to go over some stuff and see if you guys...
How loosely based do you want to be in the book?
Yeah, exactly. What do you define as
no dialogue
in the books?
It actually is like an actual event or scene.
Okay, so not just like they were in Emmons Field, which
it's not
Emmons
like
Field was in the book, right?
It's the name. They use some of the names.
Yeah.
They don't look like the characters
that
of the
count?
places, but you know.
We're talking about scenes and events. I guess events are technically the scenes because whatever happens in a scene is the event, but whatever. So event/scene, and the dialogue doesn't matter because anybody can copy and paste a single line and then throw it in the thing and say, "Oh, look, it's a proper adaptation." It's not
how loosely are we like if they do something similar, like. As an example, I can give up. Like technically, a Trolloc or Trollocs did attack the Alfor farm, right? In both of them.
Yeah, but we're like you. In
Also,
like
the song about Menethrin I don't count because it's in a completely different.
And it's not even really the song about. Menethrin.
And also that it was the story.
It's like, hey, let's take an entire like story of this grand arc, and then we're like, we're gonna make it like 4 lines.
That is the worst. That was probably the worst info dump I've seen in a TV show.
It was pretty cringe. Also, considering that was like totally not what I would. I mean, Gadfly probably know more about this, but Gadfly, would you consider that more of a Renaissance level singing style? Because that did not sound like that at all to me.
I wouldn't even call that singing.
I'm not defending this show in any
Good
way.
point. Good point.
Okay, but think about this. This could be a whole other topic, but I'm mentioning in brief. Okay, technically, it's the future from now, right? Okay,
or
a future, depending on how many times you go around the wheel or whatever, right?
It's the future past.
Yeah, so technically, all the songs and music we have now, in some form or another, could have survived, right? Now I know Jordan wouldn't have done it because of copyright, but technically in his head, some songs now, like when the Bard is singing all those songs, go back and look at all the different names he gives to the songs, because that was keying in my head, because I listen to a lot of classic rock and metal and all that, and I was like, that's kind of similar to, like, is he dropping an allusion to, like, a passive,
But how many would survive a massive population collapse?
Yeah,
if you want to do a close examination of the stories that Tom tells of the Hunt for the Horn, they mimic very closely some of the Arthurian romance stories. Very closely. So some of the names are even pretty close.
And the way that like stories were passed along, to quote Arlo Guthrie, for the first 20,000 years of human history, so to speak, we used music to pass along these songs, these tales, and the lessons, and everything was folk music because that's all folk music does, right? And then we invented all these other types of music in the last 200, 300 years, So it's just...
the breaking itself lost a lot of stuff because books were lost. I would assume music or things.
yeah.
Like music boxes, MP3 players, stuff like that would have all been.
I'm saying,
destroyed.
I'm not saying like saying definitely, like Master of Puppets definitely survived, and that's what he's. I'm not saying that. I'm saying in Jordan's head, he was planting stuff, alluding to songs, like because he's very subtle like that sometimes. He dropped homages all over the place. You know what I mean?
Two songs I can almost guarantee survived the breaking. One was "Painkiller" by Judas Priest, and "Eye of the Tiger."
Yeah.
So both are well themed. but yeah, like and I repping metal right now, except probably a little heavier than what most people listen to. But it's like, I don't know. The way everything was presented just seemed very out of place for the theme of the show. Like, this is a fantasy show, and then they start rapping, and you're just kind of like, what?
Yeah, no, that seems
Or it's
weird.
like if it's Star Trek, and then Klingons start dancing and whatnot. Even though I know that happened in the old ones, but under like a specific context, this one just seemed like completely out of context for whatever reason, or they just duplicated that last episode. So I don't know, but it just seems shocking because it's not like Star Trek the musical; it's Star Trek. Allegedly. But yeah.
Well, no, don't they have a musical episode now? Or
yeah, that's the thing is they had one in the old stuff. I don't remember which version it was, like the Next Generation or whatever. But they had a thing, but it was because some like deity alien thing was causing everyone, like cursed everyone to basically have to like be truthful through emotions, and they had to express themselves through songs. Yes, just like that. Gaslight hears about that all the time in his historical studies. But they're like, hey, we're gonna kind of like redo this in whatever the newer one is. That's trash. But they basically did it, and they're like, call the Klingons. So they called the Klingons, and they're like, what are you always calling us for when there's a problem? They start like basically rapping and ballerina dancing, and it was the most weird thing I've seen, because like it makes sense in the old one because they like at least the story will create the context and say this is why this is happening, and then this one they're just like randomly burst into songs. You have like somebody who can sing opera and then somebody who has no singing potential whatsoever, and it's like,
here's another stupid thing about that, right? So they spent 2 entire shows, TNG and Deep Space Nine, like talking about Klingon opera. They have Klingons in a musical episode, and there's very little of no Klingon opera.
But I always imagine the Klingons singing kind of like the Aiel, where it's just like it's all bloodthirsty war stuff kind of thing. But so in this, I found this on Facebook, so this is going to be entertaining anyway. But this is the question that was asked and people commented on. So, curious, can anyone name a scene of the show that was actually in the book? And I don't mean vaguely like there was a winter night or they went through the waves. I'm looking for detailed scenes, not dialogue either. So that's kind of the setting up of that. Now, before I go through the comments, can any of you, including those in the chat, think of a scene that fits exactly as it was in the book? Now, I'll leave a caveat as like, okay, if they mentioned a cup on a table in the corner, that's fine if they didn't add it into the show, because that's not a really big deal. But like the actual scene.
I think I can think of one, but I'm not like I mean, I only
probably do 2,
complete,
right? But if we allow for the location to be different, I can do 2.
But so the one I'm thinking of is Rand taking Tam through the forest, but they put that in the completely wrong place in the story because they wanted the mystery box story.
The mystery box is the dumbest creation, and Jar Jar Abrams.
Well, that was literally the best part of that book, was Rand and Tam in the forest, in my opinion. And like they could have had a great story. That could have been a whole great episode.
That was the bit in the story that really got me fully hooked. Like before that, I was like, I like this. This is interesting. But then that whole scene, the farmhouse, and then the dinner and the Trolloc, and then going through the forest, like that bit was what really just
the way you say dinner and the Trolloc. I'm imagining like Rand and Tam sitting down and have dinner with Narg. Dinner with the Trolloc. Yeah.
Don't you know the Trollocs are just misunderstood? If Rand and Tam offered them food, they wouldn't have attacked their hut.
What's that
happening?
If you
movie?
weren't so delicious, I wouldn't kill you.
My
Narg
dinner
is
with
not like the
Andre.
other Trollocs, right? He's smart.
Narg's
Yep.
smart.
My
Exactly.
dinner with Andre, but my dinner with Narg. Rand and Narg reunite in a high-class Tarvalon restaurant after
Can you imagine?
years
So-
of separation. And
So let's say this.
To be fair, I would watch that much
Rand and Tempe's
more
friend
likely than
Narg,
I
they have
would.
dinner at the hut, and they go back to the town, and Narg like, stop, guys, stop! They're cool. They'll give us food. And also, Trolls become like for swallows of life because someone just gave them food.
I'm just imagining the Trollocs breaking out into Klingon dance and opera.
You know,
But I mean, like for the scene with Rand taking Tam through the woods, they didn't like how I pictured would be the smart way to do it. I know that's giving them too much credit to be able to even accomplish this, but if they were doing it, first off we would have gotten like a lot of the whispers and stuff that Tam was saying because like they kind of skipped the actual important dialogue of the scene, and despite dialogue not making it as like a one-for-one, the scene itself alongside the dialogue is what makes the scene. So as they're traveling towards Emmons Field, we're not getting all the little snippets and like the fever dreams and stuff because of, like the Gadfly said is the mystery box.
because Tam reveals the entire history of the family, right? He marries Carrie. Carrie and Tam, for whatever reason, cannot have children. Tam finds the baby in the woods, takes it to Carrie, and it's like, we're gonna, like, I know you've wanted a child. We can't have a child. We can raise this one.
See,
and then about how Carrie loves the baby.
well, to add on top of that, not only is he doing that like in the story, but Jordan, who's actually a great writer, unlike whoever did this show, is planting like he's using writing to plant seeds, not just that Rand is the Dragon Reborn, but to get you interested in Rand's character. To say, wait, this
you
is
make him an enigma.
Yeah, well, not so much. Yes, that's true, but like you're starting to wonder, not just the enigma of Rand, but how is Rand going to deal with these mysteries? And we see him right that struggle with Rand trying to piece it together, even after he knows he's the dragon and proclaims it. He's still trying to piece it together, like the balance. All like he's Tam's son, but he knows he's not Tam's son. He's a sheep herder, but he knows he's the dragon. Like he's still trying to.
When I say enigma, I don't mean like everybody else thinks he's enigma. I mean from the viewer's perspective.
Well, no, I agree.
Perspective.
No, I understand.
Enigma is like, okay, well, I'm hearing about this character. He's got this strange backstory now. What more do I not know about him? That kind of thing.
I agree. I understand. I completely agree. I'm just saying, from the writing perspective, he's taking you on Rand's psychological journey.
Yeah.
Okay. Like
it's less about the reader discovering who the Dragon Reborn is, and more about the Dragon Reborn discovering he's the Dragon Reborn.
And not to skip ahead, but when Rand is finally kind of there, in like let's say book 5-ish, even though he struggled with other issues, he's planting seeds of Perrin's journey now, and a lot of Perrin's psychological journey is picked up in the books after as part of Perrin. You know what I mean? And it's his ability as a writer. That's what I'm saying right here. Like it's amazing when it comes. I'm on my first full reread since I've read the series when the last book came out, and now I'm going through it again. I'm noticing all the little things that Jordan put in place, with developing the psychology of some of these characters and how he didn't just do it all at once with every character. Like there was very little character growth for say Nynaeve in the first book, right? And I told you, God, I hated her when I first, but she was my 2 favorite characters by the end of the series. Like now I'm noticing on this read through that how he planted little things here and there, not so much to make you hate her at first or whatever, but things I might have missed on the first couple of rereads or whatever, because I'm now have a full perspective having read the last book, and now you know what I mean. Like
Hindsight 2020.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd like to answer Alturian. Did the boys wake up to dead creatures after a Dark One dream? The answer is no. What they did is they swapped that because that happened in Barrelon.
No, there were dead rats around at one point. I think Balsamon kills a rat in a dream, and then
in Barrelon.
the rat shows up in real life.
Not in the
Weren't there bats lying on the ground?
No,
dead?
he vomits a bat.
Yeah, he vomits, but Weren't there
There
also
were no rats.
on the no, but bats on the ground, dead.
Maybe,
I
but
think
that's
at
not
least.
that's not a book
I'm
thing.
I'm not entirely sure whether that
It's
is actually in the
not-
show or not.
The show had the bat come out of his mouth because
Yeah.
shock value, I guess.
I
Like
guess.
it's a horror theme, which didn't make any sense whatsoever because that would have like how are you going to fit that in your mouth? Like, come on, guys. But the dead rats would have been interesting because you could have experienced a scene, which I think would have been fantastic television to have a scene where they go to sleep, they wake up and tell Riyadh, and Balzamon's there, and he cooks a finger, kills the rats, and you see all the rats snap and everything. And then you wake up and you're in Barillon in the inn, and all of a sudden all the rats are everywhere with their backs broken.
It would have been probably better if they
exceeded
woke up and then they were relieved because it was just a dream. But then, oh no.
That's the point. Yeah, like that's the point. It's like, oh, that happened in the dream, but then they hear like, oh, the cats. Why is everyone blaming the cats? And it's like all these rats' backs are broken, and it's like, cats don't break the backs of rats; they just kill them.
But the other thing is the dream is setting up dominoes to fall down later, right? Like the eye of the world will never serve you, right? Like that comes up
Which
in
leads
one
a lot
of
of
the dreams.
questions because we're like, what's the eye of the world?
Yeah.
Is it a person? Is it a place? Is it a thing? Is it an object? Like what is it? And that's why for like the reader, we're like, intriguing. I'm kind of interested in this. And it's the same thing with like Rand taking his dad Tam through the forest and having fever dreams and stuff. We become intrigued by the character because at first we're like, okay, we're seeing it from his point of view. He's got to be one of the main characters or a character of importance, at least for this chapter and the following chapters and stuff. But when it gets to later on, we're like, okay, we have all these different stories and they're drawing in the reader, they're drawing in the viewer because the viewer knows certain things that the characters themselves don't know. Then we hear about Menetherin, then we get the chase scenes, and then we get to Barillon. We learn a little bit more. Nynaeve joins the party, and then we get to Shadar Logoth or Shadar Lurgirth. But it's those kind of things where if it was just like, okay, we're in this thing, Rand vomits a bat, and there's a bunch of dead bats around. It's like, oh, that's from the book. It's like, but it's not. The concept is from the books. But why they didn't just use rats, I don't know, because to me that'd be more freaky than bats.
They think they're smarter,
Probably.
Well, you said it earlier. They wanted the shock horror value as opposed to the psychological
Also,
build-up, right?
Because we don't have Murdral, we don't have
maybe they thought bats
Ashtar.
are more evil looking or something than rats.
Well, I would say maybe
don't
they
know.
grew up on Scooby Doo for their horror, and we just bats all over the place in Scooby Doo, and that inspired them.
Well, here's the thing, though: is like bats are never mentioned as like servants of the Dark One. Rats are.
Yeah.
So
Ravens and
Balsamon going and then breaking a whole bunch of backs of things he doesn't have control over doesn't make much sense. But things he does have control over does make sense, because it's like, oh, he makes bats come out of people. Well, if he can just do that, you can do that to the entire party, and then bam, you've caught them because they're all dead. Like,
Yeah.
why make it come out of the mouth and you can just leave it in the mouth and they choke from asphyxiation? Like, none of it makes sense. It causes more questions to be occurring than it is to be answered. So
Well, that's the whole nature of the first season.
that's the nature of their writing style, yes. But
Yeah.
that's the problem is that they're so hooked up on the mystery box. It's like, okay, here's the mystery box. What's the mystery box? Bats come out of people's mouth. Why'd that happen? That's not a mystery box. It's just a question. So, did you guys have another?
Only one I can think of is Logain's parade, but of course it's not in Camelin, and of course he's not standing proud in his cage. So,
And
how
of course,
much leeway
there's
do you
key
allow him?
characters missing from that
Also
scene,
that.
right?
Also, he's way too close to Rand because he was supposed to see Rand's like aura. He wasn't supposed to see Rand directly because Rand was sitting up on top of the palace wall, and Logain's way down in the main street.
Rand
So, like, he
was
wouldn't even be able to make him
Rand
out.
was up on the palace wall because the filthy beggar Padden Thane scared him away from the procession route.
Yeah.
Got lost, climbed up the wall. Turns out it's the wall of the palace
The
of
palace garden. The palace garden.
Camelin, right? And so he's watching the thing. Then you get introduced to Elaine and Gawain and Galad and Talonvor and Morghese and Elida and Gareth Bryn. So it's like
Big characters.
yes,
It's a domino that leads
the
to some
books,
big things. Yeah.
but it's like it's so shallow.
But how much is a scene from the books if it's in the wrong place, it's with the wrong people, it's at the wrong time? Like it's like, oh, it's the same except for this,
Significant
this,
changes
yeah.
to character,
this.
significant
It's like,
changes
okay, so
to
it's not the same
settings,
scene, is what you're
significant
saying.
changes to plot.
Yeah,
Sorry,
the dialogue. Yeah, it's fine. It's like he laughs. Well, Logain laughs, but Logain didn't have the creepy freakazoid laugh. I imagine like a proud, unbroken laugh, like you guys think I'm a problem. Like that's how I imagine it. Like,
well, it was more so for me, like the whole parade. He was standing tall.
like his presence made people like who were throwing rocks at him like freak out, like, oh my gosh, like.
And then his notice, to me, it seemed like him giving this massive ironic realization of the massive irony of his existence, right? Like, so he's like, oh, this is such a great joke. Like, I've done all this stuff, but you guys have no idea what's in store for you now.
It's about to get way worse for you
and
guys.
I thought I was doing fantastic, amazing things, but oh boy, I am just a small fish in this big ocean. And so him giving this ironic laugh of like self-deprecation, realization of the severity of what the world is going to be coming across and all that sort of stuff. Just like
I always seem to like his standing proud and laughing was kind of like, hey people, the joke's on you. Because you got the wrong guy. Like,
well, it's even self-deprecating as well, because he realizes
that he's
there as well that it's not him as well, right? So he's like, oh boy, I've done all this for practically no reason whatsoever. Life is just a bitter joke.
I mean, his existence actually plays a role because, as Moraine states, because she hears about, like, after they're camped out in the mountains at the beginning of book 3, she hears about another dragon reborn, but it's actually just Rand. They're thinking about it, and she thought somebody else proclaimed themselves, but like, well, no, they didn't. It's just people are saying this guy was, this dragon was raised in Almoth Plain, and it's like, but that's just Rand. And she like freaked out. She's like, did I get the wrong one? Because the dragon's supposed to make all the others fail. Which is what happens to
the dragon raised on Almoth Plain, Rand, the dragon in Chaldea, the dragon in Tyr, right? Like, and so
Gildan.
Well, Gildan was earlier, right? But at that point in time, dragons started springing up out of nowhere, right? And so that was one of the things where it's like,
yeah, but they all got sort of randomly arrested / stopped after Rand.
Well, it's because stuff, right? Rand's fighting Balzamon over Falma is what basically like pops everyone else, and that popping of everyone else. Although I think Logain was a little bit earlier than that, because
Logain was earlier, but
time was up and
there were a bunch of other false dragons running around at that time. That then all suddenly
the guy from Haddenmerk
locked down,
basically done with. He got executed, and then you had Taim and Chaldea, and Logain was already captured because by the time they get to Camelin, he was already captured. But it's like they have a role to play, because then we're like, okay, we see false dragon, and then all of a sudden it just stops. And then from that point, it's just like when we know who is who, because everybody else is like, oh, this thing happened, and we all freaked out, and then there's only one guy left. So he does have a role to play, despite even that. But I don't know if Logain was aware of the prophecies in its entirety, or if he just like, I can channel, I'm the dragon. Like I don't know what his goal was. Maybe he was just intending to conquer everything.
He was
Maybe
definitely aware of the prophecies, because you hear in the Eye of the World,
prophecies entirety, because there's a lot of stuff that like the Aes Sedai themselves only knew about.
But you hear in the Eye of the World that he names his army the people of the dragon and is marching on Tyr, right? Because that's one of the prophecies. And so from my perspective, it seems like he was a fella who knew a lot about the prophecies, if not everything in their entirety, because I don't think anybody ever does. And so he, similar to Rand, right? In the third book, Rand is like, okay, well, I have to fulfill a prophecy. And the best prophecy to fulfill in order to assure myself I am the dragon is to take the Stone of Tyr.
Though the interesting about that is that's well, I mean, we don't really know Loghain's perspective on it, but Rand's obviously wrong because the pattern is going to make him fulfill the prophecy because he is the dragon reborn, right? Right. So if you follow the logic that the pattern, until he basically says I'm the dragon, has the big, seeing all that, the pattern is good with all these false dragons. They're going to partially fulfill these prophecies, which helps convince them that they may be the dragon. So maybe Loghain was marked in some way. You know what I mean? Like on his hand with a heron or something, a bird of some sort, right? So he said, man, that could be a heron. Maybe I am a dragon. I'm simplifying it for sake of argument here. So all these false dragons are getting signs from the pattern that they could be the dragon, right? But the only one who could actually go the step beyond and be the dragon is Dragon Reborn.
It's also the you've gone silent for me.
Who?
Matt.
Can everyone hear me?
I can hear him.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay. I was gonna say Sage is muted, but that's
Yeah.
Sage, so
Interestingly enough, I don't know if Jordan did this on purpose. Arturian would be a good person to ask this. I think in the Bible, like all the prophecies of Jesus, right? Like there were other false messiahs, and technically the apocryphal text and all that, but there were other false messiahs fulfilling some of those prophecies. You know what I mean?
I believe it was like 460-ish prophecies.
Yeah, whatever. How many there are,
There's a lot.
Jesus is the one who fulfilled them in the Bible, right? So, but the way it's structured is, other people were fulfilling parts of them. You know what I mean? And so, I don't know if Jordan was drawn from that sort of logic on purpose with the wheel of time and the pattern and all that, but that's part of Rand's character journey again, which is a longer term one, is realizing that he doesn't have to force the pattern; he just has to do what he has to do.
I don't know if he would have. I mean, I know he utilized like deism type stuff and whatnot because he was a deist himself, but I mean, he didn't make it like obviously religious in any particular.
Well, I didn't say he made it religious. I'm saying.
Well, no, I'm just saying like in his pulling from his sourcing of.
I don't say this to offend any Christian out there, but look at the Bible as a well-written work of fiction for limited purposes here, and there are structural things in there that a writer could draw out. You know what I mean?
My point was that like you have the 460-ish prophecies, Jesus fulfilling them, but in this situation, there were still people claiming to be the Messiah after he left, right? So that wouldn't have added up quite. I mean, the prophecies aspect maybe, but there's a lot of prophecies and a lot of different cultures, and all those different cultures, some of them got fulfilled, some of them claimed they got fulfilled, some did, some didn't, like a little bit of everything. But I don't think outside of, hearsay or saying they're like, oh yeah, they did all this stuff, none of them actually did, with the exception of Jesus, because the historical documentation on them's pretty high, surprisingly. But it's one of those things where I don't know if he got it directly from like the prophetic stuff from the Bible or whatever, but I would say, I mean, Gadfly might be more familiar with the overarching, and maybe Arturian as well. How many, like, the play of prophecies in a wide variety of cultures and whatnot.
Well, you have the ambiguity of prophecy, right? There's the classic case of the king of the
classic
Lydians.
case. What's it called?
The king of the Lydians, Croesus, goes to Delphi to ask if he should go to war against the Persians. And the prophecy that comes back is, if you go to war against the Persians, a great empire will fall. So, of course, Croesus interprets that as, if I go to war with the Persians, I'm going to beat the Persians. The actual answer to the prophecy was, you go to war with the Persians, your empire will fall. Right? So it's the ambiguity of the interpretation of prophecy is one of those aspects as well, where oftentimes you don't realize the prophecy has been you don't realize what the fulfillment of the prophecy is until it has been fulfilled.
Yeah, I would say that sounds very similar to like when Jesus is like, "Hey, I'll destroy the temple and in 3 days it'll be rebuilt." And then they're all like, "You can't destroy the building and then rebuild it in 3 days. It took lots of time to build this." And they go on, blah, blah, blah. And he's literally talking about him being destroyed or dying, and then in 3 days he will rise again. Like that was literally the whole tomb thing. And you're like, okay, that's what he was talking about. So he's making like this prophecy.
Yeah.
That's technically part of the prophecy that the Hebrews had. But then they're like, how? That's ridiculous. You can't build it. They were believing it was the building, not the person. And even in the Christian stuff, it's like the person is the temple of God. So it's really easy to understand when you have the entirety of the context, but from their perspective, they could only see it as one, which is the same thing as like the people of the dragon have to take Tyr. So if the people of the dragon, well, who's the people of the dragon? But from the Aiel perspective, they've always been the people of the dragon to some extent. And so them arriving probably against all odds of theirs, because like they had their own prophecies that lead towards the prophecies of the dragon. So it's like, it's just a matter of interpretation. It wasn't like, hey, we're going to go find the dragon reborn. They're like, we're looking for he who comes for the dawn. They don't even care about the dragon reborn.
Otarian commenting now.
Oh, there we go. There have been and still are many false messiahs. The quote-unquote original intended structure of the Old Testament hints at a mortal king messiah. Jesus switched the rules and gave even more than what the prophecies foretold.
Yeah.
There you go. Residential
and then,
Theologian.
Another literary work, like, has anyone read David Eddings stuff? Bulgaria, the Malorian. Okay, well, he's another fantasy writer, obviously, and
obviously.
Well, I mean, you guys probably heard of the name if you haven't read the stuff, but maybe someone listening is like, who's 12 is like, who's David Eddings or whatever, He's written the Bulgaria, the sequel, the Malorian, and he wrote the Elenium and the Tumuli, and a whole bunch. And there's two separate sagas, very similarly structured, and one especially, the Bulgarian, is built heavily around prophecy. One's called the Revan Codex, and the main character Garyon in the Bulgaria, he fulfills these prophecies like it's like the pattern does. Like they're just going to happen, right? He's going to be in a place where they're going to happen. He still could fail at a task and therefore not fulfill a prophecy, but not because he avoids it. You know what I mean? Like he's going to run an opportunity to fulfill prophecy, and he's either going to be capable of and make the right decision or not. You know, so which is another take on these prophecies. Whereas with Rand, they're just sort of happening. He's not. A lot of the ones leading into the dragon aren't things he really chooses, so to speak. They're just things that happen.
So Arturian's like, not even looking at it as fiction, LOL. The Bible is just, it's always weird saying LOL out loud. The Bible is just a wondrous work of art with many different literary tools used. So I get what both of you are saying in that regard. I maybe he used it. I don't know. I don't know what Robert Jordan's interaction with like the Bible would have been. He didn't believe in that direction as far as anything I could see. Of course, he could still have used it, but there isn't really much allegory related, I guess, in that regard. So
well, I'm not referring to like allegory or anything. I'm saying.
Well, no, but I'm saying like the inspiration coming from it. He could easily have taken it. He could have taken it from a whole horde of different options to get the still prophecy kind of idea.
Oh yeah. It's just that the Bible prophecies of Jesus are one of the more thoroughly in-depth series of prophecies compared to
Gadfly. What was the one? I think it's Greek, and it's basically the guy ends up marrying his mom and has to kill his dad.
Oedipus Rex. Yeah, where
I could see a whole lot more being what he pulls it from, because it's literally a catch-22 where it's like, oh, I'm going to avoid this, and I end up doing it by trying to avoid it.
Yeah. Well,
I have that one in mind as well.
The prophecy was that
idea. Ha.
Oedipus's
Damn it.
father got the prophecy that Oedipus would kill him. So he threw him away, exposed him, as happens with so many of the heroes. But then he gets picked up by a farmer, a shepherd, actually. It's because it's always a shepherd.
He farms sheep.
And then is raised in there. And then Oedipus gets the story that he's going to kill his father. And so in order to avoid that, he runs away from it. And that's where he meets his real biological father, who is a complete and utter douchebag. And so Oedipus kills him for being a douchebag. And then goes to become the king of...
And then marries his own mother.
and marries his mother.
Yeah. So I could see that being used as like the prophetic basis of the story. Probably much more believable than I would of the Bible. Because in order to understand, like, there's 460 prophecies, which, I mean, Prophecy of the Dragon, I don't even know how many prophecies were in total, but it was like 30 or something. It was like a much smaller number. And Oedipus had, like, 10 in a single story. So it's like, okay, well, I just have to make it a little bit larger of a number and then basically play it as like a double prophecy where people think it's this, but it's actually this. So while trying to avoid this, they end up making this happen, which is the same thing as the Oedipus story. So that makes more sense. Obviously, it's hearsay. It's theorizing what he actually worked with, because I don't know if he actually did or ever commented on it. You guys know more than I would in that regard. But in that regard, it's like there's a little bit of that, but I don't really know if that's the right direction to go to, but I should probably corral us back to the actual topic before we end.
I thought we exhausted the topic.
Oh no! There's hundreds of comments, dude.
So you're gonna give us comments that people made that.
Well, I was asking you guys for yours first before I go to what they said. So this
makes sense.
It entertaining.
So we're gonna be like libs of TikTok now, or we're gonna be like
basically
what do we want to call the show? Show is
Questioners of YouTube. We're the questioners of YouTube. So basically, remember that the criteria is something that's actually in the book. Hi, buddy. Not the mic. It's something not a vague scene, but a detailed scene. Now, detailed means details matter. Granted, little details like the color of the grass at the particular time of day doesn't matter. But things like, was this person there? Did they have a line of dialogue that matches the scene? Were they in the right setting, like in the actual building that they're supposed to be in, or in the open air? That kind of stuff. Like the details that actually matter, as opposed to just the generic scene. Like they were on ground, so they had earth beneath their feet. It's a matching scene. Like it's not like that. So it's a bit more detailed. So you guys did yours. Do you have any more before I go into this?
No, with the caveats of detailed, then I'm going to say there's literally nothing in there.
Yeah,
I'm going to point out that the caveat of detailed went by a lot of people's heads, like a lot. So the first one, the Trolloc raid. Does anybody?
That never happens.
Exactly. It happened. It just wasn't explored. Like they didn't show the actual raid. They showed the after effects.
well, it was also not. Honestly, even in the aftermath, there was nothing like the show.
Yeah.
Like the trolls were targeting specific things. They weren't just raiding across the.
Well, they burned random houses to draw attention as they were going through.
Yeah, but they targeted specifically only the three voices houses.
Yes. And there was no
and the
targeting.
smithy for some reason, I think.
I think they were
Does Perrin
targeting
live there?
Yeah.
any
Because
boys
that's
of
when
that
Perrin
age.
was an apprentice, right?
Yeah,
Perrin
but
was living with the Luhans, if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
But his family still had like their own farm and whatnot.
But
And
they were
then
targeting other boys of similar age, and they mentioned.
yeah, okay, I didn't catch that Perrin actually lived at the smithy.
They didn't
yeah,
target
he
any of the
woke
other
up early in
boys.
the morning and went to go crazy.
They didn't target any of the other boys' houses because at that point they had determined which of the three were the three that they needed. But the other boys had
Fane-
seen the
Fane
fate.
had marked them.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had seen the man in black. But so obviously things of like the scene didn't happen because they never showed the fight. that automatically ejects it. But the person's like, no, the trial looked great. I'm like, details. How about this one? Moraine coaching Egwene through channeling intentionally for the first time. Rand meeting Loyal, and you could have this showdown come to mind at the top of my head. Another question related yet quite different would be: can anyone name anything from the show that was purely fabricated for the show without roots of the books or being be the whole show? But but yeah, it's like so Egwene being coached by Moraine channeling intentionally for the first time.
Yeah, I guess that happened.
Yeah, no, that's
But did it happen in the proper location?
probably not.
They skipped
In
that
the
whole part of
wilderness
the book.
somewhere?
I mean, that
They
did
skipped the whole
happen
part of the
somewhere
book.
in the wilderness, right?
They were on their way to, I believe it was Tarn Ferry,
Yeah,
because
Baerlon.
they had it was they were in a hollow when she started teaching her about
Yeah, it's
the
definitely
One Power
pre-Shadow Logo.
before they got to the Tarn Ferry, because they were pursued, but they had
the-
managed to avoid.
The scene in which Rand listens in on them is the scene after Terran Ferry.
Was the hollow after Tarn Ferry then? Because I remember there was a hollow, and they went to the hollow, and then Egwene and Nynaeve were they having the campfire right there, and he just kind of like listens
the
in, or was
flight-
he had to actually crawl out and
The
go after
flight
them?
from Emmons Field to Terran Ferry was pretty much one day.
Yeah, and then they
I
bought
thought they
extra
stopped
time
once,
by
because
making
it's a
the
pretty
river
good-
all misty, making them think that they sailed downriver.
They
So they had
stopped
extra time,
so
maybe, I
Moraine
guess.
could refresh the horses, in which Bella is not needing refreshing, which is one of the first hints of Rand being able to channel. One of the first hints. There's an earlier one.
Yeah.
I think
And
one of the
they-
Dark One servants is attacking your camera there, Gadfly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's literally a fly attacking Gadfly. But I was trying to remember, because I was trying to remember the distance they said, or I'm trying to remember if they actually did say the distance between Tarn Ferry and Emmons Field, because remember they left in the night, and that's quite a distance to get to Tarn Ferry. So I thought they had stopped a certain distance away from the town, and that way when the Trollocs and the
left
Myrddraal
in
realize
the
they're not
evening.
there, they would have left. But then the Drakkar chases them a certain distance.
So they left in the evening, not in the dead of night. So it was in the evening, but not quite night. In the middle of the night, they pass Devon Ride, or is it the other?
No. Devon's Rise the
I think
opposite. I think it's
Devon
Watch Hill, isn't it?
Mm,
Yeah, Watch Hill. They pass Watch Hill.
They
And
see
then-
Watch Hill in the distance. Great distance.
And then in the early morning, they get to Terran Ferry. In the books.
and then they have to wake up the
Yeah.
guy.
You're referring to the guy that Moraine murders in the show?
Yeah.
But it was either right before Tarn Ferry or right after. I remember they had a break. Like, I don't remember how long it was, but even if they left the evening, I thought it was a pretty long go to get to Baerlon. So I thought it was a whole day and a half went, because they showed up at Baerlon, I believe, at night, and that's one heck of a distance. But
Yeah, well, because it takes several days to get from Terran Ferry to Baerlon.
I feel like it takes a whole day from Terran Ferry to get to Emmons Field, though. I'm trying to remember how big that area was, because it's a pretty big, like, little dip where they have the two rivers coming out of it, and then the mountains in the back. It's
They
a
were-
pretty big, good sized
They
area.
were riding fast the whole time. And the other thing to remember is that the boys made semi-frequent trips throughout the years to Watch Hill and Devon Ride, right?
Mhm.
So that's them, on foot or on horse or whatever, going at a slow pace.
Okay, so
They're not galloping.
I grabbed a timeline from the Wheel of Time wiki, presuming this is remotely accurate. It says they left on basically it was like one day. They listed as however you pronounce Ein 9 or March 24th in the Gregorian. So it all happened on one day.
To get to Barrelon or
To get to
To get to Terran Ferry.
Oh, to Terran Ferry. Okay, so they got there in one day. What was it, like a 24-hour period, or was it within the same day?
It says it's. I mean, there's
Because
a big,
they left late. Because I remember it was getting close. It was either close to night or night when they left. Because they were leaving shrouded in darkness when they left the two rivers.
Let me call it up so we could all see it.
And people were all at home. They weren't out and about. So
There you
if it was
go.
evening, people could have still been around.
So I have it shared so you can see.
It's not going to give me the actual time today. So at dawn, blah, blah, blah.
I also got on the screen share if you want to call it up.
Well, I was just looking at it real quick
Yeah.
just to see if it had an actual time period because it shows the chapters and it shows the day. So
It was
in the
basically
same-
one day.
Same day, Moraine guides are going through her first use of the power. I don't. Okay, so they arrived. Yeah, that was before Barrelon. Because Barrelon was March 30th, and they did Moraine guiding going through her first use of the power March 24th. So 6 days before.
which is
So that would have been hollow.
So that's technically in between.
I don't even see the mention
Valkyrie
of
and
the-
Shadow
I don't
Logo, right?
They crossed the Terran on the 24th, and then okay, yeah. So right after Terran Ferry, they make the camp at the Hollow, and that's when Moraine goes over the one power with Egwene.
And also, can I just want to throw in as well.
Better than throwing up.
The hollow that they camp in the books is a hollow that Land pre-prepared.
Because he had a tea set or something hidden there.
So he had places set up beforehand because they knew they would be coming with people, or at least one person, on the way back. Whereas
I'm not sure if I would put it to a they knew as much as he prepared in case. Because when they got there, Moraine's handing out coins to all these kids, right? But she's not going specifically to the ones that were the highest of, because she went there and she went and asked questions. She was asking about the history.
Because
how long has this family been here?
She was
How long has these
asking for the ages of particular boys as well, right?
Yeah.
So she knew the age range of the boys she needed. So they knew that there was going to be at least one person that they had to try and find a way to take out of the two rivers. But they didn't figure that they were going to be taking 4 children from Emmonsfield plus a Gleeman.
What are they, tinkers? Stealing kids in the middle of the night? But, I mean, I can see it being realistically, because of Land's personality. For one, I believe they stayed at the Hollow, the previous, on the way in. And I know they have to come out, because the only way out's Tarn Ferry, because they don't know about the ways at this point. So,
Well,
them
also,
staying there being
wouldn't
like, I'm
want
going
to
to be
go
coming
there.
back the same way anyway. So I
But
can
it's
stop
just
my-
that idea of Land and Moraine being prepared in advance, having a lot of this expectation and goals and ambitions and designs. They had plans in place and they had things established. Whereas in the show, it's just like, oh, we got to the right town at the right time. Right? Because the very first scene in the show is them chasing down the Red Aja chasing down that random guy.
Well, speaking of,
And then Moraine being like, oh no, he's not the one. So it's like, why were you were checking out this guy?
But the funny part is that they say he's not the one. I'm like, how do you know that? Because he got like
Well,
gentled. Like Well, how do you know he's not the right guy? Like you don't know any of his history. You don't know if he's the proper age. I mean, he's obviously way too old, but you don't know any of that stuff because none of the qualifying factors are there. They never once hey,
considering in the show they
they need
didn't
to be
know
in this
what the
range.
age would be because they included a queen in the potential dragon.
naive.
Well, interesting. If you want to interesting contrast and compare, by the way, how one creator who adapts something can do something, change something really well, and another wouldn't. So Gadfly brings to the point that in the book, Land prepared stuff, right? It was more thorough and all that. Whereas in the show, they just whatevered, you know. Go back to Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings adaptation.
In the novel, the hobbits they prepped for that journey. They planned. They moved to Buckland. They had supplies. They went through the old forest. Their journey was very prepped and planned. Whereas in the movie, Peter Jackson got rid of all that and made it sort of like a running for their lives type of thing. But he did it very well. Like he adapted because he took to the pacing he was going for. You know,
He wanted to increase the pacing so people weren't
Yeah.
bored just watching people walk for a long time.
yeah. Well,
Which
you know,
I understand, but I still would prefer to have seen it.
the point I'm saying is he did it well. You know,
Yeah.
Or
And
see how
whereas-
Frodo spent 17 years in the Shire, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Watch every hour of that.
Like
Um,
Lord of the Rings Part 1, Frodo ages 1 year. Lord of the Rings Part 2, Frodo ages 1 year.
Fellowship of the Ring Part 2
It's like-
of 633. So Sage sent me a picture through Discord, and it shows like the first bout. I guess they're fleeing of Edmonds Field to Tarn Ferry, which is about it looks about 50 miles. Like it's that little plot of land they got is pretty large.
I put you the timeline over this so you guys can have a link to it if you want it later.
Well, I think he got it in private chat, except for maybe Altarian.
Well, anyone can now see it if it's Altarian.
So it's like the first one going from Emmons Field all the way up to Tarn Ferry is like 50 miles, and they did that in one go. And then to proceed from Tarn Ferry to Berlon's like 100 miles, and they do that in was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days?
Yeah,
Like,
it's
How
the
did you
difference
pull
in
it out?
pacing is rather
Because
You're
you
interesting.
think the idea would
You're
be
able
get as
to-
far as you could.
Sorry, like this.
but I
this
think
does
the main
have
point is because they tricked the Shadow Spawn
Drakkar.
that they were actually
They-
going downriver.
Yeah,
But
they tricked
it also
Hidden
has
by mist.
the explanation of the first leg of that trip from Emmons Field to Tarn Ferry was at a gallop like the entire time, right? And Moraine used the one power to invigorate the horses, but they also explain that they can't keep doing that because the horses are
drop
still
dead.
tired.
Yeah.
They just don't know it.
What he
Yeah,
basically
so
did is he took away their nervous system to know that they need to stop
Yeah.
doing what they're doing.
So,
basically what he
so if they kept going at that pace, or even at
A brisk walk.
a very vigorous walking pace, the horses would probably collapse.
Yeah.
And so they had to take it slow for a little bit afterwards. But they also felt they had the safety of having crossed the Terran. Right?
Crossing the Tarn and also misguiding the Shadow Spawn.
Yeah.
Because
And they also,
making the Drakkar
broke the
think they're
ferry.
going downriver helped them a lot.
Yeah.
But I guess the other one would be Rand meeting Loyal.
It's
That go
technically
down
in a
back-
library. It's not in Tarvanan, though.
The library was in an inn in
In
Canelan.
Canelan.
Big difference. It was also a massive library with a
And-
massive Loyal. We didn't get either of those.
And what is this mysterious ogre creature that Rand references in the show?
So
Yeah, no, I don't
It's like-
remember those from the books.
That
like,
was
oh,
that was
you're
such
an
a
ogre.
stupid line. Like
Maybe
an
he
ogre?
he
No,
just
not an
watched
ogre, an
played some
ogre.
D&D earlier.
The,
and,
the writers, the writers basically played stupid games and won stupid prizes when it comes to pronunciation. But that's a different story.
You should have had like Shrek jump out of the forest somewhere.
No. Even better. Shrek burst through the wall with books flying everywhere and go, "Oh yeah!" Just like,
Get out of my library.
this is my library. Get out of my library.
Should have just painted Loyal green, right?
I mean, we didn't get Rand falling on his back.
He
Like,
literally
like,
would be
oh my
Brock.
gosh, who are you? Trying to like pull his sword out. We didn't get any of that. He just like turns and puts his down his sword like, who are you? Are you a Trolloc? I'm like, are you blind?
I thankfully don't remember too much about the show. So
I sadly remember too much.
Does Loyal suggest that Rand is an Aiel in the show?
Yes.
Yes.
Like,
He does?
vaguely.
Okay.
He
You look like
actually
an eel
calls
man,
him an eel.
Yeah,
You
looks
like,
like
you
a
look like a human.
something
But
like that.
here's
And
the
then
thing.
Ron says, "Oh no, I'm not an eel." And then Loyal, "Oh yeah, an eelman who
But
doesn't."
that means nothing because we don't get what Tam said.
Yeah. Well, we
Until
don't know.
later.
We don't know the significance because there's no significance given to us. Like, hey,
Yeah.
this is important information. Like, it's like I'm going to give you the plan. but I'm gonna
Actually,
leave out all the
that's
major
another thing.
details.
I'm pretty sure in the book they mentioned Aiel War. I mean, we know it for several reasons, obviously.
Well, Tom, when they first meet Tom says Rand looks like he could be an Aiel.
You can pass
That's
me.
in like chapter 3.
Not in the show.
No, but I'm saying
No,
in the
the
show,
boy.
there's no. That's the first reference to Aiel anything. But we know there was a war, so we know there's like tension. Like when people look at Rand, there's tension. You know what I mean? Especially people.
Well, we know nothing about like.
Not
I mean,
that-
obviously,
not
in the,
that,
in the show,
you
they
know-
were very.
show Rand looks anything like Rand is supposed to look. Not
Yeah, well, art unfortunately is sometimes not the best thing to base it off. But
Well, to be fair,
descriptions
also
are terrible.
actors aren't always perfect representations of.
They can be
character.
close without caring. I'd be
Mhm.
at least happy with putting effort into it. But
Are
unfortunately,
there many 6'7" redhead actors out there?
This is exactly why
Probably.
it's an anime series. It's
given
exactly
the quality
why.
of this show, I can name at least 7 WWE actors who have red hair who could do this better than this guy did.
Yes,
Doesn't
but
even
you
need to
don't
be
have
naturally
enough
red
to
hair.
make
You can just paint
entire
it. Right?
13 clans of Aiel? Can you have that many? Men and women?
There's a lot of pro wrestlers, man. Just dye all their hair red.
There's a lot of pro wrestlers. You just call the entire like professional wrestling league. It's like, I need all your tall redhead men and women. All of them.
You could always do a Wheel of Prime and Photoshop 7 actors like 25 times.
True. True.
I mean, they could also, I don't know, use the same technology they used in like 1999 and to 2001 or whatever, 2003 for the Lord of the Rings, how they made the massive Orc and Uruk-hai armies, like, or the massive Rohirrim armies.
Well,
It's not that difficult. The technology's been there for decades.
Just
you
go
could
to
Um,
Ireland, find
it's
all the
probably
redheads,
decayed a
and
bit
use the
by
Lord
now.
of the Rings heightening technology to make them look tall. And you're
That,
done.
that would be very difficult to do with that many people, but yes. I think they should have just made
But
an
worth
anime.
a try,
Anime
I
would have
guess.
been everything that they could have
I
ever
agree.
wanted because
Fully
you
agree
could have had
there.
tall people be tall. You could have had redheads be redheads. You could have had Ogier be 10 feet tall, even taller than
Just,
them.
just,
Just
for the hell of
recently
it.
watched Demon Slayer and the effects on the swords there. That's might translate
with
very
the,
well into a Wheel of
The
Time.
Aiel,
type,
right? Like there were blonde Aiel, and there were a couple that were said to have had like lucky black hair, right?
Okay, so I just randomly Googled this, right? I'm not saying all these guys. I'm gonna put the link in chat.
But
I'm
were
not
there
gonna say all-
Asians?
I'm not gonna say all of those guys are 6 foot tall, or whatever. But I just Googled tall red haired actors, right? And I can see at least 6 people who are better actors than whoever the guy they got to play Rand.
Yeah, they're all about a foot short, but yeah.
But so is this guy.
Yeah.
I hesitate to say the guy is a bad actor because for all I know, he might be doing exactly what the directors want him to do.
Well, I'm not
You can
saying he's
only-
bad.
you can
I'm
only
just
put
saying.
so much onus on top onto an actor because we don't know. Because
I should
you could have a
actually
really
maybe
good
watch
actor
the.
being forced to
No,
play really
no.
badly, aka
Yeah.
Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones style.
I'm not saying he's a bad actor. I'm saying based on what we've seen, like the actress who plays Nynaeve. I mean, I think she's a better actress than the role she's given. I think she's honestly trying to play the character because you see her doing mannerisms and whatever. But she's
Actually,
not
I'm going to check that film that the actor that plays Rand plays in. It's in Dutch, so you probably won't be able to follow.
There was the one interview that the
maybe
Zoe,
he's good in
whatever
that.
her name
I'll
is.
go watch that at some point. See if it's better.
But the the one interview that Zoe, whatever her name is, who played Nynaeve, said, where she said she was reading the books and had to stop because Nynaeve character in the books was way too different from the Nynaeve character in the show. So I mean, like that's
That
all
should
you
have
need
been
to
the
hear,
death
right?
sentence for like if that when that was publicized. If I were Jeff Bezos, I would have fired everyone who's running that show on the spot. We're just right there, you know.
But that's the problem, is that in the Hollywood sphere, executives don't watch their own shows.
Well,
Producers
we know, I mean-
don't even watch their own shows.
I mean, okay, I joke
So
about
it's
Bezos,
like,
but
can you imagine putting multi-millions, tens of millions into a show, if not hundreds of millions into a show, and not even making sure it's good?
well,
like,
I mean, okay.
You just assume you're going to make profit. I'm like, no, you want to make sure it's as good as it possibly can be so you can make maximum profit, not bare minimum profit or loss.
And to be fair to Jeff Bezos, he doesn't run Amazon anymore. Hasn't for a long time.
There was rumors of him coming back. I don't know if that ever happened.
That's what there are rumors about that. But technically, right now, he's running his biomed company and his space company and his political stuff.
He's really trying to rival Elon Musk there with the space company.
Yeah. He's working on asteroid mining, and Elon's working on like manned access.
Yeah. So basically, from a scene to scene, like Loyal and Rand meeting, it was probably the closest accuracy they had in the show for anything in terms of like the dialogue. But like they could actually get more than a sentence. It was like you have, Lan doing his whole "I will hate the man who loves you," but blah blah blah, because I can't have you. Basically, he does that one line, but in this they could actually take sentences and put them together and make an actual dialogue that was probably the closest, most accurate thing to the show. But we had no, like, if you were not a book reader, you had no idea the importance of any of this, because you don't know, like, is Rand different because he's in a village full of a whole bunch of different people. None of them are even remotely alike. How do you know?
The scene with Rand and Loyal as well is particularly egregious because the way this show is written, there is no purpose for Loyal to be there at all.
Yeah.
He does not lead them through the ways. He does not open up the ways for them. That it's Moraine that does that.
Well, I mean, even in the books, he does the same with the Leaf, but he just leads. He's the one who knows how to get through.
Yeah, he's the one who reads the Waygate signs, posts, and stuff.
But you're right, though. I mean, he's following Rand because he originally was curious about Rand, and then he became his friend. And I'm not under the impression he's become anyone's friend in this show.
He's just there.
He's also a very learned person, and I'm not under the impression that in the show he's a very learned person at all.
They try to make him sound more intelligent than he is, but they don't give him any like intelligent dialogue. So he's I can't feel invested in him because it's like, for one, he doesn't look like him. Two, like nothing about him screams Ogier at me except for the fact that he's like, books, I talk slowly and I have some slight dialogue that was reminiscent of the books. Like that's it. Everything else, there's no real, like, he's never like, oh, you humans are so hasty. Like, he doesn't do any of that stuff. That like is the mannerisms of an Ogier.
No, I think he actually says that humans are hasty one time in the show.
But he
does, but he says it like for one instance.
Someone probably just told him, act like Treebeard.
You never get the impression that characters are just chomping at the bits, wanting him to get to the point either, right? Because that's Loyal, be brief is a meme in the thing, right? Because it's not like with the Ents where they take a long time speaking to deliberate. With the Ogier, it's like, I'm going to start talking about this one thing, and I'm going to go on this wild series of massive tangents to explain.
Yeah, so Loyal's basically like us, right?
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find. Unfortunately, I think I lost the spot. I gotta get past this guy. This guy had a very
playing pin the tail on the bad comment.
Well, unfortunately, you could throw a dart and pretty much hit everything.
Carpet bomb.
There's a lot of them. Well, with that, well, the whole like let's cover things that were in the series but not in the books, and then it got really out of hand, in a good way. But they're like, somebody wants to get Matt the Galan and Galad, Gawain and Galad, but yeah, they didn't know.
Galan.
Galan and Galad, yes.
Remember,
we also
it's
spelled Matt with two
Galad
T's.
now.
It's what?
It's Galad Tricond now.
True. Well, probably. I don't know. Do we know
Well,
his accent?
that's one of the
spelling
names that they have on the
While you're looking, I called up Joseph Stradowski's IMDb page, right? He's the Rand actor, and the trailer they're showing they're not showing a clip of him, and there's his picture, and there's a clip of Moraine showing.
Yeah, it's the same thing they did with The Witcher with Geralt and Henry Cavill. Like, he's hardly in the last couple episodes. Like, I think they said in the second to last episode he has like 30-second scene time.
Yeah,
and then I was like, in his finale of his career in this show.
Yeah, yikes.
And on the poster, he's in the backdrop. He's not even like there. Like, you can't even see his face. It's like half his face. It's like shrouded like this. So,
So
like,
much
the entire,
like Rand and the season 2 poster.
basically, yeah. Somebody's like, when Rand screams and cries like a baby every 5 seconds. Classic Rand. But
When Lan does the same.
yeah, that too. That was one of the things they mentioned about was not in the books but was in the show. People brought that up a lot. Somebody did bring up Perrin and Egwene jumping into the river to escape Shadar Logoth. Now this is a bit of a trick question. Did it happen in the books?
Technically, a bit.
They didn't jump in together.
Not together, no. But that's a technically part.
Do you guys remember the scene?
I think Perrin runs with his horse over
One of
the
them had a
cliffside
horse.
in the river.
They both went off of the wall with their horses. Perrin loses his horse. Egwene has Bella. They are separated in the river. They both went the same way together, but they got separated in the river, and then they find each other afterwards because Egwene has a fire going and Perrin shows up. So they rode off. They didn't jump. In the show, they jumped.
But
Now,
that begs the question: how big should the wall really be?
That
You can
wall. Like,
ride
wall's
off with a
typically, like,
horse.
Gadfly, you might know this one better than you and Tyrion, actually. Tyrion, you should know this one too. A wall would be roughly around, was it 25 to 30 feet? Correct?
Depends on the size of the city.
This is typical, like, good sized city.
Yeah,
They like Jerusalem level.
yeah.
Like, very popular.
20 foot would be a pretty good wall. You could see some that are higher.
Would you ever see a wall that's like 100 feet?
No,
Anyway, just looked it up. 20 feet is roughly 6 meters for
point.
those who don't speak Imperial.
For all you European scum.
it's like there's no point to have a wall that size.
Well, that's the thing, is that in the show, they're like...
Well,
they're like...
In the
I mean, if you're going off of a 20-foot wall with a horse into water, that's believable that, you'd
in the
survive.
book, they don't jump off a wall; they jump off a cliff edge into the river.
Yeah.
Because they leave the city into the woods, and then they jump out. Right, so
Well, that was the other
it's
thing
a
I thought
minor
was weird.
difference, but
Well, that's the thing I wondered about the show, because in the show, literally the river's on the, like, right next to the wall. Like, the wall, river, right there. And I'm like, so you're telling
That
me
doesn't
that
seem structurally
traders
sound.
came by this area all the time and never noticed the wall and be like, maybe I could trade here, and then wander in and cause problems? Like, no, like, it's never brought up into that way. And we're just like, I'm confused, because
well, the show didn't even have traders going up and down that river, anyways. So,
Also, I think in the show the wall was supposed to be fully closed, except for the holes that appeared later. Right?
well, the gate was open. It's just nobody entered.
Was
Like,
there a
the entrance
gate in the show version? I'm not sure.
Like, it was
I think Lan
It was always
talks
open.
about it, and he says,
because
at first
previously-
when they built it, there was no entry into the city. They were completely closed off.
Well, here's the thing: is that after Shadar Logoth went through its phase,
Mhm.
basically the Trollocs, yeah, no, it's emo phase. When Trollocs wandered in, and they didn't come out, they went into basically.
Yeah,
see
but
what
that's in the
happened,
book.
and they. Well, I know, but I'm saying in terms of like in book of like how everything is supposed to be
Yeah, okay.
allowed. The show, the gates were wide open too, if I recall correctly. They didn't open a gate, I don't believe, because I mean, obviously, what good is a gate if somebody can just go boop and just move it open? You might as well just have it open. But I was trying to remember because I think Mashadar completely removes the bodies, the blood, and everything. If I recall, it was
Probably.
Machin Shin, I believe, is where Trollocs were like using blood, drawing in blood, like crying out to the Dark One to save them or something like that.
With
Machin Shin doesn't
Machin
remove
Shin,
them.
it kind of like consumed them and petrified them in a way.
Puppetized.
Sorry?
Puppetized.
Petrified.
Well, I know what I'm saying, like how Padan Fane, Mashadar, and everything, because Machin Shin just makes you go insane because they've pulled people out before. They just didn't have a soul. They were husks.
Yeah, well, but how it deals with Trollocs, like there are instances in the ways where they come across Trollocs who have encountered it, and they're essentially petrified husks, right? Like they've had their blood sucked out, like mummified. Trollocs, essentially. In Shadar Logoth, the Trollocs, in their desperation to escape Mashadar when it attacked them when they were camping in there, they
Machin Shin.
Mashadar
No,
when they were in
Mashadar in Shadar Logoth.
Oh, I thought we were still in the woods. I was like,
they painted
Mashadar, what?
They painted like prayers to the Dark One on the walls in the blood of whoever was at hand, type of thing.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if that was in Inside the Ways or if it was in Shadar Logoth, because I thought they were said that they went in and they couldn't find anything, just like remnants of some equipment.
Yeah, they couldn't find anything aside from scraps of stuff and these sort of prayers and stuff.
Dying grasps. So yeah,
the walls in like blood and feces and whatever.
Yeah. So let's see what the other one was. We got somebody else brought up Rand meeting loyal. How this one? Tom rescuing Rand and Matt from a fade.
Nope. That was in Whitebridge, I think.
Yeah, Whitebridge in the books.
A random farm in the
in the show.
A random farm in the middle of the night in the show. Whitebridge in the middle of the day. Which
on the plaza.
You learn later on that incident causes a huge disturbance, and so yeah, a very different situation. Especially because Tom had been with them for like months at that point.
Well, I was
long.
This timeline.
It'd been weeks, I believe. Well, because technically Tom was with them since Emmons Field, so technically the entire trip of Emmons Field, it was already like 2 weeks before they even got to Shadar Logoth, and then Shadar Logoth for the river ride down would have been a couple days at least, so probably almost a month.
Using our real world calendar, right? Matt sees the mirror draw on March 20th, right? And where are we? Perrin and Egwene encounter the Tinkers on April 10th, so it's like not even a month later, And I'm just looking for like roughly month time marks here. And what? And sometime at end of April now, look for and on April 30th at dawn, a female Darkfriend tries to kill Rand and Matt. This is from the book timeline.
April 16th is when the spray arrives at Whitebridge.
Yeah.
So April 16th from them meeting March 22nd. So March 22nd.
We're talking like 2 months basically. From the beginning to
that'd be about underneath.
No, it's March to April. That's
March,
Yeah,
April. So March
Slightly
22nd
less than a
to
month.
April 16th, so a little bit less than a month.
Yeah.
But that's still a long time, and he kind of becomes fond of them in that process. But I remember, do you guys remember Sword and Reflection, Sword and Pen Reflection, whatever it's called? I can't remember the one that's happening.
She has
to
another
be-
she has another episodes out, by the way.
I haven't got to watch it yet, but I want to.
Yes.
And I like her takes, but some of her takes, I'm just like, but again, she's not finished the series. I can't hold her to
She's
that.
a first-time book reader. Yeah, you gotta remember that.
Well,
Yeah,
she's
but
she's
she
also
has-
consuming the two at the same time. So in my mind, there's some cross contamination going on in her
Yeah.
understanding of the books based off of what she's seeing in the show.
That's
I
like
think
having the
if
best.
she's read,
I was gonna say that's like having a great steak and putting tar on it.
Yeah,
puking
kind of
color
that's-
onto it and then eating it.
Technically,
But
calories.
we don't want those kind of calories, though. It'll be the last calories you ever consume. But she had made a comment about not being believable that Rand and Matt are taught by Tom to juggle and play the flute and all that kind of stuff, like
Yeah.
do
Well,
acrobatics.
There is a comment in the book that Rand has a background with some sort of music.
That's what I was going to bring up. Is that there's actually like evidence that Tom says, "Oh, Matt has quick hands, so juggling he should be able to pick up right away." And they spent days solid,
Well,
not only just
Also,
it's even before they
Matt,
get on the spray.
if you start from book 3 somewhere, we know has a background with being super good at stick fighting, let's say.
But
So that might translate somehow into juggling or something.
So
I don't know.
even in the books, there's hints that Tom is teaching the fellas, all three of the boys, before Shatter Logoth. It's little snippets, right?
Plus the Taviran, they'll pick it up
But
fast. So.
her point. Well, I don't know that really translate in that regard.
Well, think
but-
about it, because to learn how to juggle is like learning how to ride a bike.
There's a part of your brain that has to be sort of conditioned to be able to do the double movement. And it could take an hour or a couple of days to try to do it. The skill isn't doing this. It's your brain being able to move the hand independently. But there's a part of your brain that learns how to do that stuff. And
Yeah, but I'm not sure that has to do with Taviran. Taviran's
Well-
like the pattern affecting like things around you for your benefit, and I don't see that being that kind of thing.
I would say, well, they had to learn how to do that to survive.
Well, yes, but if Tom acknowledges that he has quick hands, he already has like a natural athletic inclination to be able to produce this kind of thing. Now he starts out dropping balls, and then Tom, like over the several days that they're on the ship on the spray, kind of teaches him how to do that. So she's like, "Hey, this is totally unbelievable." I'm like, "Why is it unbelievable? It doesn't take that long to learn to juggle the basic juggling balls. Like, it's not like Tom's having him juggle like 20 balls simultaneously."
It takes as long as
basic.
for your brain to learn that trick. It's like how
Yes,
some
but
kids
if you have quick hands, it's assumed that your brain's already gotten to that point to where it can function.
No, it's not. It's not being quick-handed. It's like a little kid. If you put a little kid on a two-wheeler, some of them within seconds of it, the brain get the balancing trick. Some of them take days to do it. I'm not aware enough of neurology to explain it, but I did read about it a lot. There's a part of your brain that learns how to do balancing stuff like that. That has to be taught that. You know what I mean? Like it's like programming. Like you can have this great generic chip like a pie, like a Raspberry Pi, but it's not. But you have to program a specific way to do specific things. It's a brain programming thing for juggling, just like it's for bike riding or walking or there's a surprising number of things like that. Like it's a whole fascinating other topic. If you go read about it, it's really interesting. And a lot of things we assume to do, like when you throw a baseball, everyone, like if you don't get taught, you floppy arm it all the time.
That's my left arm.
Yeah, coordinating the throwing motion between your arms is another one of those tricks to be able to do.
I'm blaming my two prior major concussions on the fact that I can't do anything like that. So,
Well, that's the thing. Brain damage, and I know this from having suffered it. It can actually take stuff away. like the same it damaged that part of your
Well,
brain.
I've never been left-handed, so my left-handed throws like that, but my right hand can do it fine.
Yeah.
So I've always been right-handed dominant. So sports-wise, I was always right side.
I always joke
I used to kick left.
that it was you right-handed mafia types that made me right-handed.
Because I'm a natural lefty. I swing a left-handed golf club, a left-handed baseball
You're
bat.
naturally wrong. That's what the problem is.
I'm an absolute servant of the dark one.
You know what's the funny thing about archery, though?
That's
People
like-
who are right-handed sometimes shoot left, and people who are left-handed sometimes shoot right. But it also goes the other way around. Sometimes, if
No.
most
As
of the
an
time
archer,
you're
I can
right-handed, you're
confirm.
shooting right, and vice versa, right? So
I can tell you from baseball, when I swing the bat lefty versus righty, it's an entirely different thing.
Oh yeah, the motor skills of it is totally different. Like it's much
Yeah.
for me, it's much more natural to do it from the right than to
Or
do it with the left. I would
even a
flop every time.
A left-handed hockey stick, like I can do things one way that I can't with a right-handed hockey stick. I can do the right, I can't with the left-handed. It's really weird, you know.
Science.
Yeah.
But
I'm just saying,
Anyway.
it's fascinating. I don't want to get lost in it, but it's a fascinating thing.
Mhm.
And that
It
to
is
me is when I read
that's what would drown everyone in chat.
to return back to the topic, when I read Matt picking up juggling very fast, I'm like, okay, the pattern's making his brain adjust really fast. That's the
Well,
first
the-
thought that went through my head years ago.
the other thing
Okay.
as well is these are
I don't know if it's ever made anybody smarter though. It's the problem.
the main character and major character
But after all,
of the stories, right? So they're going to be
Yeah, super skilled at stuff.
Yeah.
well, I mean, they have natural athleticism towards certain things. All of them do, and it's like Perrin's really strong, Matt's really dexterous,
Dexterous.
and then you have Rand, who's just like tall and kind of generally having to guard sheep from wild animals and stuff. He's got his kind of alertness.
Well,
and his
the-
kind of
the
his
farmer
basic thing, but he's
physique.
also bored, so he does what he does. What shepherds are notoriously known for is playing the
Mhm.
flute,
The-
or the harp
the
or
old-
something. Like
the old farmer physique, right? Like you're doing a lot of manual
the muscle
labor throughout
lean
the entire day.
figure.
So you are just like full of lean muscle.
Yeah. So, I mean, she's like, I don't find this believable. I'm like, I mean, it didn't take long for me to learn to juggle. It took a couple days, which would also equate to Matt having to learn in a couple days. And he's still practiced the entire time they're walking to Canelan. And he didn't play for his food, I think, in Whitebridge originally. So it's not like, it's not this crazy far, like, it's not so far out there like it's a Mary Sue
it's
where
an
he just
idea-
magically learned.
The play for your supper is an idea that they come across sometime down the road of
We
them
got
being
hungry
able
and
to run.
whatnot. Yeah, it's like we got hungry. How are we going to do this? Well, we can pay with entertainment, just like a Gleeman would. And since Gleeman were in high demand but low supply, it helped them out in some of the areas they needed to be. So it's
Also,
like
they don't need to be
I don't find
perfect
that.
because,
Yeah.
well, there aren't many.
it's sometimes
Gleeman
it's
around.
sometimes more entertaining if they aren't perfect. that's part of it.
Exactly.
It's like, "Hey, what a loser. But so I thought like that was something that just kind of bothered me when she said that. I was just like, okay, it's not that hard to believe this is the thing because you can go out and just see people do this kind of stuff. Like it wouldn't even require the pattern
Again,
per
that's
se.
what's our world experience now? I mean, we have different world experiences, and certain we give out all perspectives. Maybe ours is different.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but I'm saying like it's not one of those things like super far fetched or super overpowered like a Rey Skywalker kind of thing, like where she
Yeah,
just
no, that's-
automatically is good at everything. She can handle a lightsaber better than people can drink water. Like it's just it's completely comes out of nowhere and has no backstory. Where then all of a sudden it's like we actually have training periods. We have people that have a history of doing something like Rand playing the flute. Like some things are needed to be improved or whatever, but it's just like that. But yeah, I didn't find it to be that far off the top in terms of like
Mhm.
reality or realistically understanding it. We've already kind of actually I kind of wanted to touch on this one again because I did have a viewpoint I wanted to share about it. So the Rand hearing Tam's fever talk about him being born. I thought they could have done it in the actual show, basically like as he's pulling him, we hear Tam doing his little mutterings and whatever, and the Rand kind of hears it, and then it is kind of like a flashback. This is standard TV stuff. It's not even difficult to do. Standard flashback But instead of doing an Aiel woman who's like matrixing a whole bunch of swords
A
dudes,
pregnant
and
Aiel woman.
pregnant and giving birth, labor, pregnant
Yeah.
woman, doing all this kind of crazy stuff.
Because that's perfectly realistic, right?
Well, whether it's realistic or not is not even the point. Like the books don't even show the fighting aspect. It shows that she was there, and it's assumed that she was a fighter because she's a maiden of the spear. But that's it. We don't know much about like what actually happened. Did she kill anybody? Maybe, maybe not. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
We hear
Die
later
there?
on
Yes.
the practice of when a maiden of the spear is pregnant, she goes off and gives birth, and is not involved in battle at all during that time period, and then gives the child to a wise one, and the wise one gives it to somebody else, and then
they literally baby launder the kid.
Goes back. But we learn that spoilers for people who might, but we learn that Tigraine, calling herself Shail at that point in time, had Genduin wrapped around her finger so much that he could not deny her anything, and she said, "I have to go there." So you can extrapolate. Oh, she went
for death.
You can extrapolate, being like, oh, so she went to war with them, or you can extrapolate that she
went with them, and that's it.
To be fair, though, the guy Shine went with them too.
Yeah.
Like, but the thing is that Rand's mom's supposed to be a maiden of the spear, so we know she was a maiden of the spear, but we don't know how they treated her through the pregnancy while she was a maiden.
Yeah.
Like, all of that is it's completely irrelevant in the overarching story, because all we know from the books is that he finds a baby. He doesn't even say that he finds the mom and the baby, just that he finds the baby, and the baby is turning blue from the cold. So not too long after he's born, he stumbles across it enough to save his life, but there's no interaction with Tigraine/Shail at all.
I mean, it would be kind of strange if she wasn't near, however.
Well, I'm saying, like, it could have been snow, where snow covered her body, like a snowdrift or something, and then the baby was just, like, poking out a little bit, so that he happens to see the baby, but he doesn't see the parent because the parent's corpse is in the snow.
That's one of those Tavaren pattern
effects,
putting it there, right?
Yeah. Well,
that's definitely
actually takes it. People also think, like, when did the Taviran take effect? Because the pattern didn't necessarily. It's not like they were lucky their entire lives. Like, Matt was not always lucky. He got caught and beat more times.
But maybe it was on at that point and then switched off.
Well, I would disagree. I think
I don't know.
It gave them the necessary skills in their life.
I'm not saying the pattern didn't play a part. I'm just saying I don't know when the Taviran aspect per se took effect in the boys. But him coming up, finding this baby, taking it back to the camp where Kari would have been, and then showing Kari this baby, her attempting to nurse it. I think they found like a wet nurse or something. I don't remember if it was brought up, but they basically got back to the camp. He got nursed back to health. She falls in love with him. She's a redhead. He's a redhead, so it works out. Like, no one's going to be the wiser. It's not like you have a blonde and a brunette together and they have a redhead kid, and everyone's like, now wait just a minute. Like, it actually makes sense from a genetic standpoint. So he's like, I just don't know what happened. But so Kari being a redhead, when they get to the Two Rivers, no one questions it. They just assume it's Kari's kid.
Does Tam
Even
have
when
red hair?
Tam doesn't know.
Or had?
Kari did.
Oh, yeah, Kari. Yeah, okay, fair.
Because she was an Outlander wife.
I thought you meant
I think
Kari
she's
and
Ileana, but I don't know. That's the problem. I don't
She's
know what she's
probably
from.
Andoran,
Well, I say Ileana because he served as one of the 100 companions.
Yeah, but
that time period.
just Andor seems to be the place in the world where you get redheads who aren't.
I mean, part of me wants to say it was what's the place south of Andor? Irish place. Murindy. Part of me wants to say Murindy because Murindy is notorious for like its Scottish redhead, fiery temperament type people. So it's like maybe he picked her up on the way back to Andor or on the way to Ilion. I don't know, but
all we know is that at one point he became the leader of the companions.
Second in command, technically. He was the second guy.
second.
But he was high, he was very high on the totem pole. He was very good at what he does. He's a blade master, all that fun jazz. And he marries Kari at some point between leaving the Two Rivers and the Aiel War. That's all we know in that regard. But you could easily do these flashbacks in like quick succession and take up maybe like a minute. And you would have that kind of like interchanging between Tam's mumblings and mutterings, the actual like his voice narrating it in his fever dream while you play it in the snow. Like that would be 110 million times better than what they did in the show. And it's just like
Kari's from Camelin.
maybe she is.
The naming
I don't remember Kari
mixes
being
well.
ever like stuck
Yeah.
to anything, but I could believe it. It's again, it's not like it's too far off for that reason, because I mean technically Tam's not Andoran, so there we go.
Technically he is.
Technically he's not though. That's where you're wrong, kiddo.
Depends on whose map you're looking at.
Well, I was talking about genetically genealogy or whatever. Like,
Let's see. Tam
Big difference.
ran away from his home in the Two Rivers and joined the army of Ilian.
Yeah.
So maybe he was. Well, no, okay, fair enough. The Two Rivers belong to Andor.
well, see, the thing is, Andor claims the territory, but that's like saying, freaking Amadesia claims Terabon. Does that
Well,
make all the Teraboners
The
Amadesia?
two rivers in decades past, outside of the lifetime of anybody alive, paid taxes to Andor. But then they had to stop because Andor just didn't have the resources to
Protect it.
Well,
and
or send tax people.
yeah.
That's more important to the state, probably.
Governments.
So they were under the sway of Andor,
Yeah.
under law at one point in time.
But certain things like in those scenes you could easily cover quickly and get things out of the way and just be like, hey, you know, this makes sense to the viewer, whoever's watching or reading. Like they could correlate the things and be like, oh yeah, it would make so much more sense. Or you could even have it like while he's dragging, he's hearing the mutterings from like after he actually heard the mutterings, and he's like thinking about them as he's carrying his dad to Emmons Field. There's multiple ways you could have done it, and they didn't do any of those in the right way. That was the stupid part. But the Tuatha on dancing was brought up, and I was like,
And just
none of those dances were what I remember from the books, because the books were
Yeah,
like,
no, I remember a
really
certain
funny.
description there. Yeah,
the Sassara, or was that the Saldean one?
I think that's the
Sassara's a
Saldean one.
But they had one similar to the Sassara, because Perrin later on recounts that when she mentions the Sassara, that he's like, oh, that's kind of like the Tuatha on dance. So the Tinker's dance was a similar style in terms of like the hotness and the spiciness of it, because it's designed to make men's blood go, and it works apparently. So,
So
but
it
that's the thing.
seems.
Like, I think every culture has that kind of thing. It's probably like in places like Camelin and Kyrian, it's probably more private, but in like Saldea, it's private, but it's well known.
We know in Andor it involves a table.
that
You know
can
that?
mean a lot of things right there. But another one was Moraine telling about Manetheren. That was in the show, guys.
Well,
3 sentences.
Devoid of all context as well, like forced context, being like, oh, they suddenly the villagers, the village people suddenly decide to start singing this god awful song for
yikes.
no reason.
To be fair, though, the old song cover that someone did does sound relatively
Was it
decent.
the Bardcore one?
Yeah, I think so, at least.
I don't think I've seen that one, but I mean,
It's somewhere in the
just
White
the-
Cloaks.
just the
This one.
concept. I mean, from what they showed, they could have had Matt finish off with a yeehaw, and that would have just been just out like it matched the song perfectly, but been still just out there. Like, how is this even remotely make sense in the setting? It just doesn't make sense in the setting. But I really would have enjoyed, because like the whole story about Manetheren is kind of vital for the reader or the viewer to understand the importance of, one, the two rivers, all in any interactions with anyone from the two rivers, and the importance of where the two rivers is at in basically every part of the story plot. Like,
Plus the whole old blood is strong concept, you know.
Well,
the old blood is strong, the stubbornness of the two rivers people.
That's what leads up to the red herrings in the book, right? The red herring that, Matt might be the one the Dark One's after because he's spouting the old tongue, right? And similarly, you know, Perrin is a red herring because he can talk with the wolves. But
Rand can't do either of those things, but
they're
also
red herrings
out like a sore thumb.
They're not they're red herrings, not particularly for the reader, though. Yes, a surface reader might be like, oh, what's going on here? Oh, but like if somebody's paying a
modicum of
decent amount of attention, a moderate amount of attention, they're like, okay, Rand is the Dragon Reborn.
I think I would say for a first-time reader, for the first half of the book, maybe you're still questioning, you know.
Like because the reader has more information than the characters do. That's literally the story, and we know more, so we can put things together. We're like, oh yeah, I remember that scene. And the characters, they don't think about it necessarily. I mean, I think the whole Bella being.
I think by the time they get to Shinar in the book, if you're a reader, you know Rand's a dragon.
By Shinar? Oh yeah.
But before that, I'm just saying definitely by Shinar.
Yeah. So I would have liked to have heard her actually give the actual speech, but that was not in the book. So like again.
Well, that would have been another moment where you could have flashbacks, appropriate flashbacks, because the flashbacks leading to information that should have been revealed during the story is the laziest type of revelation in writing. Right, like Rand and Tam going through the forest should have been presented in the first couple episodes. Right,
first episode
should have been the first episode, to be honest.
Yeah, depending on where you want to cut and how many episodes you actually have.
Yeah,
right?
they didn't really cut the episodes in like a kind of fashion, like make me want to come back to it. It's kind of like how they did The Hobbit, where you know we get to Smaug, and then like. We stop when he's going towards Lake Town, and then the third movie starts with him going down. And I was like, "What? Why are we starting with this? We should have started with right at like the second movie should have ended with Smaug dying, and then the third movie was started with Lake Town pulling itself back together, and then continue that. Like it was the weirdest place to end, and that's basically what the episodes were.
But that's probably because they dragged it out over multiple movies.
There are at least 2 complete seasons worth of material in the first book alone. And that's if you skip half of it.
But well, that's the thing is like I actually have scripts laying around here somewhere. I'd have to find them. Yeah. But I have scripts where I basically screen wrote all of the episodes to cover basically the majority backbone of the actual first book, and I did it in 5 episodes.
Like, you can play a little fast and loose with the second book and cut some parts out or whatever. But to me, the first book establishes so much with these characters and the setting that, every time someone says, "Can they course correct in the second season?" and I want to go, "Hell!"
No,
it's called restarting.
You cannot course correct a train that has gone off the rails.
Well, there's 2 ways they can do it. At the beginning of the second season, Moraine wakes up and goes, "That was a horrible nightmare," and you see her riding into the 2 rivers.
Or maybe you can portal stone it to a right dimension.
We're back in the right world.
I was gonna say Rand gets the children in Kyle and Bell fires the world away, and the pattern rolls around again.
Yeah. Well, here's one.
Yeah, this show, like when I heard it was only 8 episodes, I said that was one of the early signs to me that it was not
64
going
episodes for the entire series.
Yeah, it was not going to work. You know, 8 episodes is not enough to go through the books.
No.
They should have done 12 episodes. That would have given you more than enough time to get everything that was necessary to the build-up of the whole story in there.
My approximation is it would take a minimum of 75 episodes at 5 episodes per book to fully get the spirit, the bare bones.
I would
of
go
the
old
details.
school. I would be doing 20 episode seasons for this.
Oh
and
yeah,
do 10 or
I would
15
love
seasons
that.
with movies in between.
But when they started making
Yeah.
TV series with like 15 million or even like up to like 30 million an episode, that's when things got out of hand and cut things down. When they made them like Stargate Atlantis or something like that, or
Yeah.
Stargate SG-1, where they're not as
Good old
crazy
times.
high, but they could do more episodes because their budget's not over the roof or anything. That's when you could have done it. But Wheel of Time has too many special effect heavy things. Imagine Demise Wells or The Last Battle. Those are going to be so
that's going to
freaking
look
expensive to
terrible.
make because you have Demise Wells with a meat grinder, literally people just turning into meat chunks. You can't do that without special effects. The Last Battle with millions of people participating, I guarantee you they would do it with like 20 people, but the millions of people getting killed, magic flying everywhere, jumping in and out of Tele-Run-Riyadh, all the things in Tele-Run-Riyadh happening, you would not be able to do that without spending an exorbitant amount of money.
But they wasted so much money on special. Like, just go back to the first episode with Moraine channeling, right?
Yeah,
Clearly
that's
they're using the Avatar: The Last Airbender imagery. In the book, when she's
they
fighting,
fucked that up
she has
though. That doesn't
a
look
dagger or
like
whatever in
Avatar.
one hand, and she's just shooting little fireballs at people. Like, they could have just
Yeah,
did a
she's like,
flick of her hand and show a fireball at the other end. Save a lot of money, and that's the effect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, they also made it like
I mean,
she's
Avatar:
on-
The Last Airbender does still look better though in that.
So she's
regard.
doing this thing, and like you're soaking up not only the CGI budget, but your time budget. You
Yeah.
spent so much time to get that effects of the music with the visual of all this floaty little stringy thingies, which are supposed to be weaves, but you can't really tell because they're all white, and you're not like which one's fire weave, which one's a water weave. We don't. There are no fire, water, earth.
They don't even
And
look
they're
like
not
weaves,
really
just
weaving
strings.
into anything either.
Exactly.
They're just kind of floating around.
They're
Let's go
weaving
back.
through the air.
Let's go back
Okay,
to
fair enough.
the
That's the
comparison
first
with,
that
with
works.
Peter Jackson in his adaptation, right? Jackson, all the complaints I can make about what he did and change or whatever, he got one or two particular things very right. For example, take Gandalf. Now, in the book, if you know and you read and you understand Gandalf's nature, he's constantly doing things with his unseen presence around them. Okay, he's keeping Sauron's shadow away. He's doing all sorts of stuff like that, and he only manifests both in the book and the movie very specific points when he goes over full blast, like against the Balrog, for example. Right? Peter Jackson
He's not supposed to use his magic all the time for
well, he
everything.
understood subtlety. You know what I mean? Subtlety, and then so when you get that big explosion, right? Then it means something. You know, Jordan did that in the book too. What was the first truly big explosion of power in the book? Rand at the end.
Yeah. That's the.
I mean,
what's it
There
called?
was the
They're on
moment of
the-
the firewall with Moraine.
But that was nothing on the scale of what Rand did at the end.
No,
You know,
scale wise, probably
He
not. but
basically just
remember,
nuked
Maureen
that
using
passage through the
illusions.
mountains, right?
Well,
Maureen using illusions to step over a wall is kind of a bit of one
The-
power usage. I wouldn't say it's like a
Yeah.
massive amount, like you aren't going to wipe out a city with it or anything. But
the thing
it was
is,
That's
still
like just a
one
little
power.
illusion
Well,
trick,
I mean,
right?
Jordan built towards that. You know, just like in the book, Tolkien built towards Gandalf go unloading on the Balrog.
Mhm.
You know what I
In the
mean?
beginning, you think, Moraine's channeling is pretty impressive, but then at the end,
well,
it's
that's the
comparatively
big
nothing.
thing, right? Like you're supposed to see these displays by Moraine irregularly throughout the story, and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then when you get to the big one at the end, you're just like, holy crap! If Moraine is capable of doing that, but Rand is capable of doing that, like what is that power difference there?
The power level. And Moraine's supposed to be moderately strong in
She's
out of like
she's
the
one of
power.
the
She's one of the
strongest
strongest.
guys alive.
And
Yeah. So it's like that's a massive level of difference.
to Jordan's skill as a writer, okay. Now, if you got the original paperback hardcover, like this is the 30th anniversary one, they put the Egwene prologue in this. But the original prologue was the opening with the dragon himself, right?
Yeah.
So you got a mental image of what the dragon is, you know.
It
And then
bookends the
It
story.
bookends with Rand powering, you know, not obviously the scale of Bruce Dern, but it's that's a masterful build.
It opens with Luce Theron being the most powerful person, and it ends with Rand being the most
And
powerful person.
it's telling you, yeah, this is what's coming. It's like sets you up for it,
Yeah.
All
Well,
right,
I
well,
know
fellas,
that
I'm gonna have to.
has to bounce.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to jump out. It was nice chatting with you guys
You,
again.
you have to defeat the dark one in your room there.
Yeah.
Are you going to defeat the Dark One's taint, perhaps?
I've got berry trees just outside my window, and in the summer with the wind
Berries at you.
invites things in. So
And so, like, I just imagine these trees like throwing berries at you, like, get out of here, get out of here.
Yeah, I got a couple of the dark ones minions around my apartment too, so I know the feeling.
all right, well, take care, fellas. I'll see you next time.
Same.
Thanks, Gadfly. We'll hopefully get you the next one.
Farewell.
All right. So, do you guys have to any particular time you have to leave? Because I don't want to keep you
No.
here longer than necessary. But
No, I can go for another 6 hours. or so.
Arturian's been really quiet, and I'm like, he probably fell asleep, didn't he?
Could be.
We've given him like brain shock. We're talking about the show too much.
Yeah, probably.
He's like, no, stop it.
Make it stop. One of these other ones
PTSD flashbacks.
that we've kind of already mentioned. This one is Moraine sinks the boat. It's not a boat, it's a
yeah.
ferry, but
It's a
barge.
ferry. Mm-hmm.
It's a barge. But here's the thing. She does, but doesn't. Like, we don't get the whole. What's the guy's name? What's his name?
Well,
the ferry guy.
I just call him ferry guy.
I just reread it, like, obviously.
Let's look it up.
But I was under the impression that Moraine could have sunk the boat, or the Taviran could have sunk the boat. You know what I mean? Like it was never directly stated.
In the first one, they're like, "Why did you sink the boat?" And she's like, "We can't be followed." So it's implied that she's the one who caused it to happen. She caused the whirlpool. She didn't necessarily sink the boat, but she caused the whirlpool that sank the boat. So
Yeah,
technically she
it's
sank the boat.
Master Hightower.
Hightower, not under. High. It's a high, not down. So Master Hightower. We don't get the mustering of Master Hightower, his Roman, them bribing them or hiring them, depending on how you look at it, and then getting across, and then being like, "Oh no, so sorry about your ship," and then being like running off into the dark because that's going to do something. But we don't get any of that, and we get this guy going, "But my son," as Onslaught's doing. I love that. That was great. But my son. But yeah, like we get her basically committing murder because her and Lan both have had the capacity to stop him from jumping in there.
And
Lan could have easily have done it without her using the power and revealing her name.
Yeah, I let me play a little devil's advocate. You can make the argument killing him might have been necessary. Could. I'm not saying that,
Okay. Give us an argument.
No, once the barge is gone.
But what I'm getting at is you could make the argument. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying could, right?
I can't see any arguments that would convince anyone.
Like I said, I'm just saying could, right?
I mean,
you can make shit arguments, sure, but
let me make the next part of the statement. You understand?
You could spout words, but I'm trying to understand.
You know what? I mean, what I'm saying is that you could make that argument, right? But to make that argument and present it as valid in the show, you have to do more than what they did in this show.
Like there would have to be a reason why you have to kill that guy. Like it would have to be say, maybe the Trollocs would have to be like right there, or they have to be, or the Trollocs would have to have this kid with a knife that's going saying, "Take us across the ferry, or your kid's going to get." Like you have to build.
No, but even then,
something
they can still just sink the boat and leave him there. He can't make
Once
a
the
new
boat's
one in
gone,
half a day.
Hey, he can't get back across. He'd have to build something on this side.
He can
to get
swim.
back across.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying.
Well, yes, but the river is supposed to be pretty high. Like the whole reason they had a line on it.
What I'm saying is,
because
if
the
you're
river
going to
can take
construct
it
the
with it.
argument that you have to kill that guy, right? You have to do way more than what Rafe and his team of knuckleheads did in this show. I'm talking about the writing level of the show, not so much the morality of it.
Arturian said he didn't fall asleep, but he's just listening to wisdom. Well, for the morality aspect, not saving somebody would be this is where Lan would have grabbed his arm and stepped in front of him and said, "There's nothing you can do." But for one, the guy, no matter how emotionally distressed, well, for one, for 2, 3, 4, I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons why, but the Trollocs showing up at all doesn't make any sense. Because
Again, I completely agree with what you're saying. I'm just saying, I'm pointing out,
my son wouldn't make it, like, wouldn't even have a point to play.
Yeah.
But Land stepping in and stopping him and saying there's nothing you can do, holding him until the whirlpool's gone and the barge is gone, then letting him go. If he wants to swim across, he's getting his own life. But if it's an effect that she caused and they let him go into it, it's like if she makes a meat grinder for Trollocs and she just runs into it.
I
she
was
murders
actually
him.
thinking of
Well-
a more real world analogy. Say you're driving down the road, right?
Real world
And someone
analogy
walks.
magic, man. Come on.
Yeah, but it's like driving a car down the road, and in the distance you see someone walk and stand still on the road. If you just keep driving, you're responsible for his death, right?
Or
If you hit him, right?
well, like if you're driving, they're like, "Hey, I'm going to step in front of this vehicle." If you don't stop them, you're not necessarily guilty of it because you didn't cause the vehicle. But if you were causing, like, if you had a big remote control for a semi and you're sitting on the side and you're driving the semi down the street and somebody's walking by you to walk out in front of it and you don't stop them, that
Well, okay, I'll
hey,
give
hold
you-
on a second. You're basically the one killing them because you caused that vehicle to hit them.
I'll give you an example of a writer actually selling the concept you have to kill the dude, right? There's a novel, I think it was called Footfall by maybe Larry Niven or Jerry Pournelle, one of those two guys. And the premise of this alien invasion of the Earth, and the aliens are winning, and humanity keeps trying to fight back. And his reporter going around constantly revealing humanity's secret efforts to fight back under the guise of journalism for the people, right? Okay? So finally he finds humanity's real secret weapon. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm just going to and we know as readers that this character is going to reveal that, and therefore the alien will find out about it, right? So a human military guy basically murders him to prevent him because he knows what he's going to do, right? So in that case, the author constructed the scenario where killing the guy because you have to is morally defensible, right?
Yeah.
In no point in this show do the writers construct that for that to happen.
That's the problem.
But
Like,
they can't.
If he had a spare barge, then you could argue that you prevented him. But that's not
Or
even, like,
if
a moral argument. You
Moraine,
could've
for
held
example,
him.
specifically told him, "Oh yeah, by the way, we're going to Baerlon, but not in the show, of course." So they go to Shadow Logoth, which is already a problem.
Well, but here's the thing, though, is that okay? The things are required for a ferry / barge. They have to have the line across. It has to be secured. Have multiple docks for it to enter on both sides.
And you need a boat.
Yeah.
And you need the barge. Now, if you get rid of the barge and the line, what do you have to do? Well, you'd have to, one, get back across because you're on the opposite side. You're on the wrong
Set
side.
up.
You have to get the barge, bring it over, put it into the water. Then you'd have to have the rope. So you'd have to go back across, probably swimming or whatever, however they would do it. Has to be secured on the other side, and then you'd have to come back. There's no evidence that there was a second barge in Tarn Ferry. They would have had to have built it, which makes it even more questioning on how Nynaeve got across. I think they used a rowboat or something.
Well,
get
there
her
will be
across.
points where
I
you
think,
could ford a river. So presumably
I
she's a
think
woodland
in the
scout, so she
books-
can find them.
It's mentioned how she does it, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I vaguely remember her yelling Hightower out of bed and forcing him to
No, that does sound familiar.
row them across. That would make sense. But if that was the case, why didn't the Trollocs just take the boats and then just go?
Maybe they had spare
Like,
rowboats.
it would take a long time, but you could have a trickle of guys heading like a scouting party
Yeah,
or
just
something. go
send
ahead.
like 2 Trollocs over per rowboat adventure, I guess.
Sure. I mean, but here's the thing: is they hate water, so they're not going to probably even try to do that. So the barge, sending them by the barge back, isn't going to bring them back over. 'Cause
Yeah,
they
but
hate water.
that's what the mist trick was for. They covered the whole river
the whole place in mist,
downstream
so they-
in mist.
They didn't know where they
So
were
the
going.
Trollocs could think, oh, maybe they went downriver. Let's go there. They don't need to cross.
But technically, the Trollocs would have gone through the ways and popped out on the other side.
Would
Because
they?
that's how
If
the
they
other
were,
ones-
yeah,
that's-
but they
that's
were
what all the
directly
ones from-
following, right?
Well, the Trollocs weren't. Other Shadow Spawn was. So Drakkar was following them. So they had Shadow Spawn. So Murdral could have
Yeah.
followed. The Drakkar could have followed. Potentially Greyman could have followed, depending on where they were at. But they had armies, like entire fists of Trollocs from different clans or whatever,
Well, plus, wouldn't,
between
I mean,
Baerlon and Shadar Logoth. So they were there.
weren't they using
have gotten
waygates too to get around? So wouldn't there could be
Yeah,
other
that's what I'm saying.
waygates? There
They
could be other
came out of the
waygates around there.
waygates.
Yeah.
They came out of the waygates into the two rivers. So they would have gone back into the waygate, used a waygate that was on the other side of the river, and popped out. That's why there were so many fists, because they had to get all those fists of Trollocs from up in the above the Borderlands and the Blasted Lands and everything, and the Blight, down. So they got them there, but there had to have been something there. But there were waygates all over the place from all previous different types of countries and whatnot.
Yeah.
So they could easily have bounced around. They wouldn't have to like directly follow.
Were there any in the Balon region?
Wherever the Ogier built stuff, there were steadings. So
yeah,
that's where the waygates were.
But the thing is they had them all over the place. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Is because there are a ton. Because remember in the books, Loyal and what's his face starts with a K. He's one of the Ashaman. The younger looking Ashaman that they go to Camelin and run into everybody that way. He gets bonded by one of the Aes Sedai.
They're just Ashaman number 1 and 2 and 3 to me.
I can't remember. It's like Kars or something like that. But basically, him and Loyal go from place because Rand gives them an errand to go from place to place and seal the waygates, so they couldn't be used because they have traveling now, so they don't need them. The waygates would only benefit those who don't have the magic, and those people aren't on their side. So if you seal the waygates, they can't come pouring to the south of the border. If anything, going up and destroying the waygate in the Blight would have been the best option because then they have no way to get down there. But it's a different story.
Yeah, that's a bit difficult though, for obvious reasons.
Like endgame Rand to try something like that.
Well, yeah, but there's a lot of people who think they could have done it. So somebody could have tried it. But basically, they had I think his name's Karst. Whatever. I don't know why. I know his name starts with a K. But him and Loyal went from place to place to place, sealing up all the waygates. Yeah, rowboat's hidden, and you're not going to leave a rowboat out in the water with a river that's pushing a current that hard. That would be very stupid. But whether they're being hidden or not, it wouldn't have affected because Trollocs trying to get into a boat. I don't think there's one instance.
But the waygates would be located either near steadings or in big cities.
But that's because there were steadings where those big cities were. If you remember
when the big cities are gone, they could do that. Like Shader Logoth would technically have had a steading around it. Probably.
The male Aes Sedai who sought refuge with the Ogier, they built the waygates near the steading so the ogres could travel around without having to go overland, basically.
Which is why they're at steadings.
Yeah.
Let me see if they have. I don't know.
Which is an interesting thing when you think about it. Like, I mean, just about the book itself, not about the stupid show. Like, you'd think at some point Aes Sedai would start taking all those male channelers to the steadings, like before they went crazy, and seeing if they could sort of delay the effect. And
maybe they did. We don't know. We just know that some went to the steadings.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting it was there was no one to teach Rand how to channel until he learned, right? From the Forsaken, he learned it from. But like you think there was someone told the Red Odja sometime in 2,000 years, stop, generally killing them all. Get some in some control locations so we could write down how to eventually teach the Dragon Reborn how to channel. Because we actually want to win against the Darkwind in several thousand years.
That does seem like a logical solution, but
I'm trying to find a map of all the known locations.
Are there any Red Odja that didn't turn out to be Black Odja? I don't even remember.
Yeah, there are.
Yes, there are a few.
I think
the problem is that there were a lot of them that weren't Black Odja, but they got converted. That's the problem.
But that's only after the.
I'm not able to find a map of any type. There is a list. So there's one in Camelin, there's one in Kyrian, Tarvalon, 2 rivers located in the city of Manetherin, Tyr, Malkier, Ilion, Ebudar, Mafal de Darenel, which is south of Faldara. I'm going to butcher this one. And Kohima, located in Tarvalon or Amadisia. Londarin Kor, located to the northeast of Ebudar. Aaron Mador, currently Farmadding. Aridhol, Shader Logoth, so there's one they could enter in.
But would they use
that makes the most sense for the region. Shamal, possibly located in Andor. Darenbar, currently in Maradon. Brame, located near
currently?
No, currently Maradon, so the Maradon field. Like that's the location it's called now. It's not called Darenbar.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
So it's currently called Maradon. There's Brame.
It sounded like it was more like Currently, it is in
It
Maryland.
moves. So like Erdhole, currently Shadar Logoth.
Yeah.
Because
Okay,
it used to be called or it used to be called Erdhole. Now it's called.
that
Shadar
makes a lot more sense.
Brame was like, I think, wasn't Brame Wood one of them? So New Brame would be. I thought Brame was a forest.
Could be. Brame
But,
is one of the largest towns in Endor, located in Bramewood.
Then there's Condaris, located in Tarabon or Amadesia. And then there's High Eklund, and then there's Iman, currently Qatar.
Extensive
K-A-T-A-R.
footlands in the northeastern
So-
border of Endor.
These are each of the steadings and the following cities and locations. So there's quite a few of them, but there's also a good chunk of them, like right there in the Andor spot where you got Manethrin, you've got Shadar Logoth, you've got what was the other one? Shamel,
And the Brame one then.
and
But
the
that's
Brain-
on the northeast.
Yeah, so like there's a few to choose from, but my guess would be that they came out of Shadar Logoth and were heading west to basically catch them off guard, because they had the mountains. They could go north, they could go south, but south they'd have to follow the river. So with the hordes of Trollocs, you could easily get them around and do things like that. That would be my guess. But doesn't mean that there weren't potentially other things. Now, Tyrion has something. The Shadow Spawn were actively chasing. The Trollocs are dumb enough to look for different crossings rather than maybe some boat. Well, true, but they don't want to. They don't want to travel, like, unless it's a bridge. They don't really want to, because it's the same thing for like Darkhounds. They hate water with a passion, and it will stop.
Yeah,
Flowing water will stop a Darkhound.
So maybe
going
the
back
chasing
to the Waygate-
Trollocs.
Going back to the Waygate would actually give them an advantage, because they know that there's a Waygate at both locations of Shadar Logoth, as well as.
But would
in the
they
river.
willingly use the Shadar Logoth one?
It's not inside Shadar Logoth. It's outside.
Fair
of
enough.
the,
Okay, yeah, no,
the grove
that seems
or-
more reasonable.
It's outside the setting.
Yeah.
So they would use the one, because it's kind of like how I do it in I don't know if you guys play Valheim, but
A bit, yeah.
it's hilarious. But basically, you find the traitor, and he's got this little bubble of runes around him. So you build your gate like right up against the bubble. So basically, when you pop out of it, you're like inside the
In
bubble.
the bubble. Yeah, that
You're
seems
protected.
like a good...
So it's the same thing with a steading, is that like it's outside the steading, but literally just outside that boundary. And then that's where they grew it, so that they can utilize it, because it was technically male channelers.
Yeah, it's impossible to make one inside the steading.
So it's just outside the steading, but Erdhole didn't have a steading in it that I recall. It was just outside of the city.
Yeah, I don't recall that detail, so I don't
So
know.
so them bringing in, was it like 9 fists? How many fists was it? Like there's a few legions in there.
A lot. Let's just
There's
skip
like
it.
at least 5,000 Trollocs or something like that. Like it was a lot of Trollocs, and them bringing it from the east to the west, and basically coming from north and south, and then clamping down on them. That's why they had to like burst really hard, get to Erdhole / Shadar Logoth, and then get inside, and that's when the pursuit stopped, because in the merge all like, we got to get these guys to go in there. And the Trollocs were like, no. We know what happens when we go in there. There's a meat grinder, and we don't want to be in that. And then
There's no food in there. We know go.
There's only death. We know go.
Yeah. Go there and be eaten, not eat.
Yeah. Not good buffet. Bad buffet.
Yeah.
But essentially, we know that they were there, and they couldn't have gotten across the river, because they would have, I mean, hypothetically, well, for one, yeah, and also Gadfly points out that there is a gateway, or a way gate in Shadar Logoth. He also points out that Rand has to get Elder Hominin Loyal's mum to help him find the way gate in Shadar Logoth to ward it against the Shadow Spawn, and that is when Leah goes missing. But yeah, it's like there's ways for them to get around, because they have to, because they can't let the Borderlanders know that they're south of the border, because that would cause havoc all over the place. Because one of the things that benefits the Dark One is that everyone believes that what the Borderlands do.
Just keep the rest of the world safe.
No. What they think they do is a fairy tale, because Trollocs aren't real. Because in the south, like Tyr, Ilion, and
Oh,
whatnot,
yeah.
they've never seen one, so they don't know it. So the Borderlands are like, yeah, we're always constantly fighting Trollocs, and then the merchants might go up there, they might see it, but no one down south is going to believe a fairy tale. So it's that kind of a thing where that's to the Dark One's benefit, because if an army of Trollocs literally shows up, like thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even 1 million Trollocs come pouring through a Waygate, now the whole world has to like rise up and join and unify to fight them back, just like the Aiel War, but more doable because the
Or the
Aiel War was
Trolloc
virtually
Wars.
impossible for them to win. What?
Or the Trolloc Wars. Way back in the day.
Yes, but the Trolloc, I don't think that the Dark One has the volume he did in the Trolloc Wars, because they got blasted out. Like they had massive forces, but you also had a lot more good guy and bad guy magic going on. So people just got obliterated on both sides to the point where it's basically non-existent. So they had to like when they get to the last battle and you're popping out 1 million Trollocs. That's like a build-up. Like they had to do that over a long time. But keep in mind how many Trollocs were used throughout the series trying to catch him and died. Like you got Tar's Gap was probably like 50,000 plus Trollocs that just got out of existence by Rand. Like these are things that they're probably not calculating this into like, oh, we could take a few losses. Like, oh, and then Agenor gets blipped essentially. So the guy who's responsible for creating them is not there, and who knows if he has a mechanism that creates them, like a little walk in this tube, they walk out of Trolloc. We don't know. Like it just says that he twisted them. I don't think he made everyone individually. That would be ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that seems right to me crazy.
But does the process require the one power? And if so, does it require Agenor, who's presumably the person who knows how to do it? He might be able to do large batches, like 100 at a time or something, but does it require him? Does it require a Tirangreal that they made? Does it like what is involved? We don't know. So when Agenor, the guy who creates the Trollocs, gets blipped out, does it stop production? Do they have to wait for him to be reborn as either Osengar, Arengar? I don't remember which one it is.
Not even just that. Like, remember at the same time that he's attacking to the Blight here, he was attacking the other continent, the Seanchan, and their approach to it was basically the WMD everything. So that would have been another depletion of the Dark One's forces.
But he also made them believe they beat all the Trollocs. Like he made them believe.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I'm just saying like this is when the Dark One uses things like Trollocs because he doesn't really care about them. He just uses them as his pawns. He uses them to make people believe he's being defeated, and then people stop believing. Like when Tuon becomes Empress and everything in Fort Chiwona, like the only thing that they're really like focused like I don't know what this Trolloc creature is you're talking, like they don't even remember, and they defeated them. Like they've actually have it in their historical annals like, hey, we have done said thing. And they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like you guys say it in your own histories that you did it, so what do you mean these mythological creatures? They're real, like they're here. So you bring them in his head, and they're like, "What is this?" And like that's
maybe she just hasn't done her history lessons or something. I don't know.
She's too busy not getting stabbed in the dark.
Well, there was. Do you guys ever watch Babylon 5?
I want to.
Okay.
I haven't started. No,
I
grew up on Stargate. So,
but there's a story where Londo is talking to another character, and he goes,
Lando Calrissian.
No, Londo is one of the characters. Anyway, he tells a story of the Centauri Empire. He goes, along. You see that guard standing over there, and Veer goes like, what? What's he guarding? He goes, well, several centuries ago, the emperor's daughter found a flower growing there, but it was on a walkway, and she didn't want to trample, so she told her father, who put a guard on that spot, and no one ever took the guard off the spot.
Well, they probably changed shifts, but yes.
No, but I mean is that's the same thing. They did something so long ago that they forgot why they did it, and now
it's just habit. They just like,
all right, looked up why is that guard standing in the middle of nowhere? You know,
I mean, it's probably like the flowers probably not in there anymore. It's probably just like it's been dead and gone.
It was a roadway. Like the reason to put the guard because it was on a roadway, and rather than move the flower, the emperor put a guard on the middle of the roadway. You know?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like even though the flower grew through the roadway, it's probably not even there anymore. They still have the guard, so like they don't even know why.
The guard was there until Londo looked up because he became in charge. Why did we have a guard in the middle of the road?
Why is there just a guard just standing here the entire time? But like, there's ways for them to get about, do their thing, and all that jazz. So it's not unrealistic to think that like the Trollocs would have been smarter when I say Trollocs, I mean Murdral, would have been smarter because
Well, they might have
Trollocs-
some more narcs in there.
there might be, but we all know that Trollocs are lazy.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
hate doing work. They hate physical labor. So if a Murdrill's like, go build me a bridge or a barge, they're gonna be like, okay, here's your barge after like 6 months, and then they'll be like, get on it. And I'm like, no.
Can we eat that? Then we'll do it later. It's like,
Yeah, it's just like, but there's killing on the other side. Okay, maybe. Motivated by violence, maybe. But they do not cross water because they can't swim. They're gonna die if they get in the water. Like you could lose. It's kind of like if you played like Age of Empires 2 back in the day, and you put a whole bunch of guys on a transport ship, and you got like a ship come by and blow it up. You'd lose all the guys on the transport ship and everything. There are no castaways. There are no anything. Like it's a done deal. So that's basically how it is for Trollocs. They're not going to survive that. I'd love to see what happened if you just like put if a dark hound's running at you and you just like pulled water out and made like a fish bowl of water and just pick him up into it where he has no traction and he just drowns. I'm like, that seems way easier than a whole bunch of other things you guys do. But be as it may, that whole thing would have made perfect sense, and they don't touch on it, and it's really annoying. But it has to be considered murder because she caused the whirlpool.
Oh, yeah, that was what we were talking about.
That is what we were talking about. I'll bring it about eventually. But like she's responsible. Like the thing that she causes is what kills this guy. She's responsible. She's not blameless. In the book, they're off. They're getting paid, and that's the perfect time for her to cause it to happen and be like, "Oh no, an unfortunate natural disaster."
Yeah,
Like,
what could possibly have caused that?
like that's what makes it so good in the book and why it's so bad in the movie, because they don't do any of that kind of stuff.
Well, not only that, it should be impossible because she killed the guy directly with the power.
Yeah, she uses it as a weapon against an inanimate object, but inadvertently ends up killing somebody. She could have stopped the whirlpool, but obviously that wasn't an option because the
She could have
Trollocs
just
that were
lifted
there.
him out.
So well, lifting's a little.
I mean, there were.
If you can make
Potentially.
enough force to make a whirlpool, I'm pretty sure you can do.
But the thing is
Yeah.
that she's not using her finger to do this, and the strength level of picking somebody up, because remember that one point where Swan, after she gets her ability back, tries to pick up Garth Bryn and can't because he's so
Well,
stuck.
she can just drag him through the water. I mean,
To
she
be
can make
fair
a
to
whirlpool.
Swan, she lost a lot of her actual power because if
No,
she
I'm just
was,
saying, like Moraine right there. I'm not saying.
yeah, but I'm saying like Moraine right there is more powerful than Swan then. So there's a potential she could have, but Lan could have just grabbed him. That'd been the simplest, easy way. He would have seen it coming. He would have grabbed him and said, "You can't do anything." And once the whirlpool stops, you let him go.
Alternatively, just maybe don't go for a super obvious way to dispose of the barge.
Well, like,
With
we got a
the
secret
whirlpool,
book,
right?
but here's like 500 gold. You can build 10 of them. You know,
Well, but you would only need like 5 gold to do that. But
I'm just saying.
in terms of the story itself, forced it by putting the Trollocs there, making him concerned about his son like an idiot because they poorly wrote him, and then making all the other things have to happen. Like Moraine's like, I have to sink this so they can't follow.
Yeah.
Now, that was the reason in the books, but there was no urgency. So Hightower could have just been like, okay, well, I'll just...
No, but there's
camp.
also really no urgency here because the Trollocs don't go in the water.
But the Murdraw potentially could have forced them across.
Yeah, but if he could do that, then he can do that at any point.
But there's no barge anymore to have. That's the point.
Yeah, no,
It
but the
would
barge
slow
is
them
on.
down so much that they could have gone any direction on the other side.
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
river.
but see,
They would have not known.
the barge was on their side of the good team, right? So
Yes,
they
but
could
so
just
was the barge
sink
master.
it. Yeah, but the barge master, you can just sort of keep him away from the barge, I guess, maybe.
That worked out so well on the show.
Yeah, no, but
Well, in the show, she
There
could have
should
dragged
be
the
no
barge on the
urgency.
shore and cut the rope, and it would have the same effect.
yeah.
Well, yeah, but like I mean, technically, if she had just
Didn't
cut
they
it and
already
let
cut the
everyone
rope
go-
though?
Well, it got cut when the
Yeah,
barge
yeah.
went in the whirlpool.
Mhm.
Like that was a thing that happened. So without the rope and without the barge, it takes time for them to get across. That's why they can take their time getting to Barrelon.
Yeah.
Because they're like, okay, we did the sprint, now let's coast, because we're not in that big of a hurry anymore. So we remove all of the excess stuff and be like, they wrote themselves into a corner by having the Trollocs show up, because the Trollocs showing up shows urgency and evil Murdraw face toothy guy, and then that's supposed to spark something in us. But then they're like, we're on this other river, I don't care anymore.
Yeah, no,
Doesn't
but
matter.
what I'm saying is, I don't think it would have been that important to necessarily keep going with destroying the barge in that specific moment. If you stop the whirlpool, it would just sort of float there in the middle, right?
I mean, if you had cut the water, or if you had cut the line and let it just drift down the river, it would have taken a long
Yeah.
time for them to get back either way.
They'd never get it back because it would be that's a
be
fast
gone.
moving river. Yeah.
That's why the
Mhm.
rope's there, is to keep the boat, the boat and the barge, or whatever you want to call it.
Unless it ran aground like real fast, but I'm gathering the river was
Well,
straight.
it,
from when
it,
it's
it would hit one side or the other, but then they'd have to have a rope to get it across anyway,
Yeah.
because otherwise whoever gets on it's going to go down the river and repeat
And it
process.
can only really get stuck if it hits a not so
Side of the
deep
river.
bit or a rock somewhere in the
Well,
side. Because
to
if
be
it
fair,
just
there
hits
could
the
have
side, it rotates and
There could be mud
flows
flats. There
further.
could be a whole bunch of other things that they hit, because from what I understand, that's not a very well-traveled river. Like neither of those, the two rivers that surround the two rivers, don't get used for like merchants and stuff, because they don't go beyond the mountains. They come from the mountains down, so everything goes through Barrelon for merchant trains and stuff. There's no official like dock or port or anything.
Yeah. Where did they find the spray? Was that on the
The
same
spray was on the
river?
other side of Shadar Logoth.
Probably not, right? Yeah, okay. So it's different river.
Because
Okay.
it was
Yeah.
coming by, like they had docked for the night, I think was the thing, and they basically come jumping on. That's when they get, is it Geb is the guy, I think, and he basically gets Rand's boot to the face because
Yeah.
he's on watch, but he was sleeping, and they thought it was river bandits, and then the Trollocs showed up and they killed a couple of Trollocs, but Baal Doman was familiar with Trollocs from his Salvaean time periods, so he thinks they're still chasing him, which is why the stories merge so nicely, because then you have, oh, they're still chasing me, and the other guys are like, yeah, they totally aren't chasing us. And then they get on the spray, and then they get a moving, and that's the whole thing. So it works out really, really nice for the story, but we don't get that because nothing, like it's just basically like, oh, we're on a boat and now we're down at Whitebridge, allegedly, whatever. Like we're making progress, but they don't actually ever like make progress, because when they split up, they don't ever take a boat. They're on the other side. We're at a mining town. The mining town goes from there to this little farmhouse in the middle of the woods. We lose Tom, and then we just they skip so much.
Yeah.
Where do you even go with that?
They
at that
lose Tom and then they teleport all the way to Tar Valon.
point? Yeah. And the other scene, somebody said that the one they thought was very accurate, the closest one in the entirety of season 1, was Rand being born. I'm like, well, considering that Rand being born wasn't even shown in the book,
technically, he's born. Okay, yeah.
but they don't show him
But-
being born.
Now
That's-
maybe
that's the
they
thing.
mean the part where Tam finds him. He talks
Which
about it.
he
Does
did-
that count?
The
I
thing
don't
is,
know.
he doesn't find him.
They mean the actual emergence from the womb.
Yeah, okay,
just
that's
that part.
fair.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it
like-
doesn't work still.
Rand being taken by Tam from Shail/Tigraine is not book, because the book he finds a baby. He doesn't find, like, it's not like Shail's like, all right, pass off to you, good luck, and then and just kicks the bucket. Like, that's not how that worked.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, none of it made any sense in any shape or form. But even if you were trying
that
to
was a
tie it in the
crazy
book, it's
scene.
like, well, this is when Tam gets him, and it's like, but that's not how he gets him. That's the point. And when the guy's like, hey, I want details, like, it has to be detailed, accurate. They didn't show a single thing that we could find. Let's see.
I can't think of a
This-
single thing.
This person thinks that he really was happy and he thought it delivered was the scene where Rand and Tam encountered Trollocs for the first time. And I was like, but they didn't show the way it was described in the books. Like they had like one Trolloc show up, and we're like, there were several. Rand has to run to the woods.
Also, Tam couldn't
out of
even
the
find us
window.
a single one.
Yeah, Tam
Okay.
struggled with one of them.
If
Freaking the women of the two rivers or of Emmons Field are like, well, it's a circle, but poke them till they're dead.
if the book never existed,
That's an effective strategy, I'd say.
It is, but not for peasant people who have no background in military strategy.
Well,
Okay.
if the book never existed,
Like
right?
we have Greek, what is that? Phalanx
Yeah,
strategies.
phalanx.
Like, you guys have no military backing at all. Like literally, Tam is the only one in the entire Two Rivers that has any military back strategy, and he's also a blade master, and he was the second in command of the Ilion companions. Like, he's a bigwig and smart, and he's like, I can't fight off one of these guys. And then you have these women just like, let's just poke them to death with strategy. Like, none of this makes any sense.
Well, like I was going to call it, if the book never existed and it was just a show made up completely on its own, and Tam didn't have a military background, if you put all those qualifiers on it, then the scene with Rand, Tam, and the single Trolloc is okay.
Yeah, no, I
If you
can.
take away all the details and all the special things, it looks fine.
Well, I'm saying just look at it from a point of view of two farmers with a sword fighting a giant monster.
Yeah, no, in that.
Well, yes, but then we see the sword, and then we find out that this is the thing, is that they set themselves up with a problem. We have a blade master.
Yeah, but that's if he
And then-
wasn't a blade man, right?
I'm saying,
But here's the thing, is that he has the blade,
Yeah.
so later on in the story, it's going to go back, and we're going to think of that. Like, but what about that one time that one farmer had the sword? Why did he have the sword? How
Maybe
did he
his
come
dad
by it?
gave it to him, right? Just like how Rand
But
got it.
they don't-
here's the thing,
they don't
they have to be
in this
answered.
show,
We get the
none
answer
of that
later on in the
exists.
books.
Like once they put something on the screen and it's like 5 episodes later, you're not even supposed to remember that occurred. like there's so much
Well, is that
inconsistent
how it
writing.
works?
I'm trying to think of them. So the Dragon Reborn, Taviran, now they have 5 of them now. Enemies all over the place. They're desperate. The last battle's coming. Let's just take a chill moment, have a few to relax in Tarvalon for a while.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, there are
They
points
believe
where
themselves safe. That's the argument. Because they
And
believe they're
that's-
in a place where they can't be assaulted by the Trollocs. They
yeah,
can't
but
be
why
assaulted by everything.
didn't anything happen during the road there? Right? There were no Trollocs
The Trollocs
chasing
dumb,
after.
remember?
Okay, good point. Yeah. Yeah.
But here's the thing: is that saying Trollocs dumb is stupid because Murdral are the brains behind the Trollocs. So it's like Murdral are not stupid; they're actually highly intelligent, and that's what makes them deadly. Not only do they have dexterity of mass proportions, like a snake sliding around, they have a hard time dying, and there's an argument made that they come back to life. But it's really hard to kill a Murdral. Like you have to kill them at the perfect time. All that stuff, like the sun has to be rising, like it's ridiculous how you have to kill a Murdral. But
well, we could just go brute force like Perrin does it, right?
But even that's what I'm saying is like even that they're more like vampires. Like you can't just kill them, and like you might debilitate them for a time period, like separate the head from the body, but at some point it's going to come back together because it's magic.
I'm not sure. I recall that.
They drain the
From
life.
books.
Vampires
No.
or Murdral?
Murdral.
Very like vampires.
Well,
They-
the
They drain the life
Murdral.
from people.
No,
remember when
that's
Moraine gets caught by one?
That's Drakkar.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Here.
Drakkar are vampiric-like because they have a crooning voice.
I don't recall
and they
any
sing-
Murdral ever
they
coming
sing to like a
back to
hypnotizing
life
thing.
after
Yeah,
being
they
definitely
cross-reference that
dead.
scene. Yep.
I have to go find it again, but there was something written about like how difficult it is to kill a Murdral. It's not just like as simple. Like, they burn the bodies because of how hard it is to kill them. Like they're like, we're not taking any chances with this. I don't remember.
Yeah, but that's probably more like they can live on with quite severe wounds, but if you properly kill it,
they're
I don't know.
dead. But then if they have time to recover, it's like do you ever watch Hellsing?
yeah.
Okay, so how Alucard kind of like pulls himself back together. It's kind of like that. I'm not saying it's exactly like that, but it's like that because if it's still nighttime or when the Dark One's more strong or whatever, they have over time to the ability to kind of come back. Is what I recall reading about them. I have to go back into it. It's not really shown well in the books, but there's a lot of things that weren't shown in the books that are commented by RJ. So where's that to run with? But I do recall reading it about that and being like, this is why, like, you don't just leave them just laying around. Now, you burn Trolloc corpses just because they stink, but for Murdral, there was a particular purpose for it. Although, in some instances, they don't burn them because their carcasses were literally just, and nobody wanted to go near them. But in terms of, like, that's kind of a side point. But their encounter, I feel like if they had Tam, like if they were going for like, oh, Tam's a blade master. It's not just Trollocs. It's a Murdral leading the Trollocs and attacking.
That could work. Yeah.
That could have made semi-decent television, because now you know you have an actual threat amongst a bunch of brutes, and then him staving off but receiving an injury. That makes more sense from a TV perspective than what they did, where it's like this strategist blade master guy who's in shape is getting just clobbered around. Now keep in mind, Trollocs fighting any Southern army later on, any of those military guys still could fight off a Trolloc on average. They usually use pike and stuff, but a blade master would chop through them. Rand chops through them. Lan chops through them. Like, it's not difficult. If Lan can fight a Trolloc, so can Tam. Now, they might be on a little bit different level of how good of a blade master, but Tam's still a blade master, which is no small feat. So they have the problem of, we have to show him being a blade master to explain why he has the blade, because in the books they do. In the show, we have no context. We just know he has a sword. Somebody's like, that looks like a blade master sword. And then we have to figure out, what does that mean? I don't know. Does that make you a blade master for owning it? No. You have to fight somebody, beat a blade master, and you take their sword. That makes you a blade master. So there's like requirements.
Does Lan even teach Rand at all in the first season?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yes. It's on that timeline you actually gave me where they leave.
No, in the book, yes.
In the show, yeah. I also immediately answered from the book perspective, but no, I don't recall anything.
I think there's one mention where he says, I need to teach you like which side's the pointy end, and it's when they're in the woods, I think after Tarn Ferry. So I think they mention it briefly, but they don't like show anything of any point. Like he's like, Matt's got a bow, Perrin's got an axe, and Rand's got a sword.
Because by the time you get to the early part of the second book, which obviously they're not even going to bother with,
Perrin doesn't have an axe, right?
You know, well, no, I mean, Lan had trained Rand enough for Rand's character to have been significantly shaped and changed by the training. He was taking military commands from Lan like a trainee soldier would. You remember when he was going to see the Amerlin, and Lan just shouts out one day, and Rand immediately goes into
he shouts, "Cats crossing the courtyard," and then he automatically goes into the arrogant kind of like saunter, which gives him the arrogant presence, but also leaves him flexible to kind of attack from any direction whatsoever.
But it puts him in the mental state of the soldier right away. Just boom.
Well, it's because he spends months. Was it like 2 months training him, like every single day?
Yeah. But,
however long they took a vacation in China.
It was like 2 months, because at that point, the Amerlin comes from the Parvalan all the way up.
Which is
they went to the way gate and were there like lickety split. So it was like a little bit different. So it took time for the Amerlin to show up, and Rand was postponing
like a 5-minute training montage in episode 1 or something, and then Rand's going to be like a master of the blade.
Yeah, he's gonna wield nunchucks.
They'll probably borrow the Conan. You remember the Conan pose?
I can already hear the rage from here.
They'll just borrow all of those moves,
all those Maul ninja weapons that you can get. They're gonna use every single one of those in the show. Look how cool it looks. It looks stupid.
I can see them doing that.
Here's one. Well,
from the looks of what we see the Seanchan look like, I'm assuming they have plenty of those types of weapons.
With the baby women?
Yeah.
You mean the fetish people?
Yes.
They look like right out of a fetish movie.
Well,
Exactly.
it's the Nation of Pride Month is what they are called, the Nation of Pride Month. So they celebrate
Mhm.
all the time in the BDSM outfits and stuff.
Exactly.
So somebody made a comment. He's like, I
They
think
have
they really missed
personal
out.
influence there, probably as well.
Yeah, probably, especially Ray.
So the Sean Chan don't have LGBT; they have SLGBT. You know, Sean Chan.
Yeah,
So you were-
Identify as Sean Chan.
they're under the plus, probably.
Yeah.
they're part of the plus, the alphabet. Says personally, I think they really missed out not showing Whitebridge and Canelan. Loyal was completely underused, and the Tar Valon scenes should have been flashbacks.
Well,
I mean,
they shouldn't have been there.
they shouldn't have been there at all because Tar Valon was never actually like part of the first book at all.
Nope.
Mhm.
And I mean, I
The
get them not
flashbacks
doing
doesn't
one
work
season
because
per
they
book.
went there, right?
They should have done one season per book at bare minimum, and then had at least like 20 episodes. But
Exactly. Wow.
I mean, if you were trying to adapt it, so that they're going for the adaptation argument or the shield, the defense shield of like, oh, I'm adapting this. I'm not making this, you know, 1-for-1, and we have to do pacing, which is this.
Yeah,
like I said,
you can't
it
do
didn't
a
take
one-to-one
very much.
adaptation. That's impossible. Therefore, we have done a good job. That's the
Which
logic.
is funny because everyone keeps saying we can't do a 1-by-1 or a 1-for-1 adaptation, and my answer every time is why?
Yeah, no,
Because there's
it's,
never been.
I think Tolkien quote is
Steve!
good there.
Prophet of the
Let's
Dragon.
look it up.
Where are the women of Wamenethrin?
They don't, Steve. They don't know about this. They don't know about this, Steve. Don't say them out loud. They might show up.
I feel like that would be the perfect time for Wally to show up and go, "Wow, man."
Well, see, the Woman of Wamenethrin for some reason seem to stalk Steve and the Man of Manethrin. I don't know. I'm an observant guy. I don't know. You know.
Wait, is the woman of Wamenethrin the Man of Manethrin's like wife or something? Or
I don't know. I heard if you say their name 3 times, they might show up.
have they been bread fried? Bread feared? What?
Yeah. So as Tolkien says regarding the adaptation thing, the canons of narrative in any medium cannot be wholly different.
Yeah.
And the failure of poor films is often
wholly
precisely an
means a
exaggeration
very
and
different
intrusion of
thing than
unwanted
people
matter,
point out.
owing to not perceiving where the core of the original lies. Blah, blah, blah.
Beard fire? Yeah, the first one's bread fire. Now you're doing beard.
What?
I'm like, bread fire? What is that? Have they been bread fired? I mean, beard fire.
I think he means balefire.
Wait, Steve, do you have a beard? I don't recall you having a beard. Or is it just it's red hair and I can't see it on your face? The women of Wamenethrin have shown up. Respect woman. The cold winds have called out to us.
Nice.
We need to find a beard. So wait, are the women of Wamenethrin technically Fail because she wants Perrin to have a beard, and she's technically part of the Manethrin line now since she's married Perrin?
Maybe? I don't know.
Nathan does. They're jealous of Nate Beard, yes. But yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff. None of this needed to be in here. But somebody mentioned one is like, how about the time that Lan hit it and quit it with Nynaeve?
I don't recall that being in the books.
That's because it wasn't. We have found
Yeah,
another deep hole where the enemies of Wamenethrin lurk. Prepare to face our deadly scissor weaves.
Oh.
They created the channel Beard. Wait. They created their channel Beard Fire to try and destroy a man of. Somebody actually created a channel to counter him? What? Are you being serious or sarcastic? I can't tell because I can actually see this happening, so that's why I can't tell. You have woke them? Are you woke now? Is that what this is, Prophet? You are woke? Woke! I don't know, Sage, if you remember that one, but it was a couple weeks ago. Oh, okay, it's a joke. Okay, I was just like, I honestly wouldn't put it past them nowadays to be to actually create one just to counter it.
Yeah, that seems.
We should have our own version of the Dusty Wheel. To be fair,
Should we?
Yeah, make Dane the innkeeper.
Could work.
Prophet, you don't have to do anything for us to derail. Sorry. Showing his ineptitude, the prophet misunderstands. We have used our deadly scissor weaves to create beard fire to destroy the man of Menethrin's beard. So apparently they like clean shaven.
Suppose that is something you can do with scissors, I guess.
Oh, here's one that we already covered, but it's somebody commented on it. Logain laughing like a madman when he sees Rand. Except Logain didn't laugh like a madman when he saw Rand. He just laughed because he thought it was hilarious because life is a joke.
Yep.
You know, I like by the end of the book series, I like Logain a lot more. A lot. I don't know why.
Well, he's just a cool guy, I guess, right?
I mean, he was just caught up in something
In the book or the show?
in the book.
Well, in the book, of course.
Yeah, book. There's a difference because I think Sanderson writing him later on threw things off a little bit from how you had been perceiving him, but it didn't help that it was kind of like in the middle of the transition from RJ to Sanderson that we basically see him kind of like broken, getting out of the White Tower and then being healed. And now he's got like a totally different personality. Like we didn't really get to experience Logain as Logain before he gets gentled, except for the proud and laughing.
Well, no, I'd like to think that we've seen quite a bit of him during the travel with the three, Swan and Leon and Min.
He wasn't necessarily himself because he was still defeated, but he was powered by revenge. Before he's captured, he wasn't powered by revenge. He was powered by being powerful and believing he was.
Yeah. Okay, that's
so. His reasoning for doing something was totally different. So,
well, like I said,
it would have been nice to see him, but I think it would have been nice to see him continuously. Like if we had seen him beforehand and then we see him afterwards, we would have been able to tell like is he continuing properly, that kind of thing. But then somebody thinks that like, do you want a scene literally word for word without any dialogue? I can't tell if you're trolling or just bad at expressing yourself. And I'm like, or you're just bad at understanding because it's pretty plain as day what he's meaning. Because he's not saying I don't want dialogue. He's saying it can't be based solely on dialogue.
Yeah,
dialogue
so no lifted lines put into another scene.
Yeah, because I can't be like, may the force be with you. Says Hagrid to Harry. You can't just be like, oh, it's Star Wars. It's like, no, it's still Harry Potter. Like you can't do that. Yeah.
Well, would it still be Harry Potter if that line was in there though? That seems...
Well, because it's Hagrid and Harry. So the universe.
I get that.
That they're arguing that if you put the line into that,
but would it still be the same universe if that line was said seriously? No, with referring to what it does.
No, it'd be a joke. Because, and this is what I don't understand, and maybe this is because I'm just the autism talking again, but like, it's so hard for me to not get how people don't get that it's easy to get. I'm trying to kill that one. It's so hard for me to understand why people don't understand that a universe has its own rules. The rules are produced by whoever the author is or creator of what, if it's not a book, if they're just like creating D&D or whatever, whoever it is, it's the author of that universe is responsible for the world building. The world building gives us, the viewers, some semblance of what is possible in that world. Can cats fly around like a pterodactyl and drop eggs? Like what are they capable of doing? We don't know, but the typical from either sci-fi sci-fi requires a lot more world building most of the time because anything's technically possible, technology and things like that, aliens and stuff. But in like a fantasy setting, it always has to come from what the reader's familiar with. We're familiar with humanity. We're familiar with gravity. We're familiar with you drinking and eating to stay alive. These are things that we see because that's what we do. Like it's easy for me to relate to that experience.
Yeah,
But if you're
we
like,
can also take tropes that exist, put them in, and then people will recognize it. So you can build on that.
but like if you're making a sci-fi show and you don't show anybody eat, but you didn't explain that they are in like a cybernetic stage where they don't need to, we have no way of knowing. We're just be like, what? How is everyone surviving? Like,
Well, I agree.
Well,
what's
it's just
going on?
off. I don't know the phrasing for that, but it's stuff shown not in the actual screen time, but happens somewhere else, right?
Yes, but the world building will explain that. That's
Yeah,
the
the world building will explain that, but
the author
you could
still
just
has to
there could
explain
just
it.
be that they just don't show them eating, but they actually still do.
Well, that's
Well,
what I'm saying.
that is the case as well. But if you're saying like we've been walking without food for 17 days, you're like,
Yeah,
okay,
okay.
are you
No, that's a
hunting?
bit. That's a bit
Are
weird.
you like what are you doing? Like when the scene sets something and you're just like, okay, nothing has been established. Like Lord of the Rings, we get established that elves don't have the same needs as everything else. So Legolas,
No, that's because they have like the super bread, right?
yes, but they don't have to sleep as long. Some like, if you're going to the D&D world, they don't even sleep at all. But it's like they're more aware. They don't get tired as easily. Like, these are things that have to be established by Tolkien because nobody was
Yeah.
familiar with that concept. That's part of the world building. So when you get into something like this, you have to establish that this thing has to be able to. It has to even be possible, even in the slight possible area. So when Robert Jordan establishes something, we're like, okay, this is something that these people can do. Or if you establish like, hey, here's Trollocs. They're half man, half animal. They're blended together essentially, and they're lazy. They always want to sleep, and they're violent, and they have a bloodthirst that is matched by very few things. And they're also huge. That's what we get from them. So when we see them, we can expect one of those things from them in every scene we come through. They're like, oh, this is a bear, so it can smell. A wolf can smell. Bird, not so much, but it has better eyesight. It like you get different things have different roles because of how they're presented through the world building. So when you provide us with something like a Blade Master, but give us no idea that they are a Blade Master, that's a Blade Master sword, or anything until afterwards, and then afterwards we find out, oh, that's a Blade Master's blade, which you got from a Blade Master, who had to have been a Blade Master for them to be able to actually have it, because it's not something you just buy off of the, like, if you were to just buy it off of the market to have, a Blade Master would show up at your house, challenge you to a duel to get it back because you shouldn't have it. It belongs in a museum. It's that concept where it's like, it would have to make sense. I know I overanalyze.
However,
these
if no one knows you have the blade, that couldn't be a Blade
But
Master
if you
coming to
have
take it
the
back.
blade and you're not showing it off, why did you spend money? Why did you go do?
Well,
any
no,
effort
but
to get it?
it could be that in this version, Tam just sort
Why do you
of
think I
got
have
it from a
all
guy.
this displayed in the background? Because I don't want to show it.
Tam found it when he was digging a hole in the field one day. He just found
So
it.
maybe he found it while on
Rusty
Dragon
had-
Mount, right next to Rand. Maybe, I don't know.
It was attached to Rand by an umbilical cord.
It was in Rand's hands. He goes, "Baba Dragon, my boy." Nah.
It came out of Tigraine on right after Rand. Like, poof, poof.
It pops out.
No,
and then
that's
pops out
perfectly
Rand.
reasonable, right?
It's like, oh wait, so women in this universe are dispenser machines. Okay.
Oh, you know, women give birth to swords all the time. Didn't you ever see that before? You know,
Or even better yet, he pops out and then out pops out a lightsaber right after him because it's got the whole blade. It's just like, like you just this stupid stuff, but it's basic. Like the reason I enjoy Robert Jordan's universe is not because it's perfect, because it's not. There are some flaws with it. There are things that never got finalized or answered. To be fair, Tolkien has a lot of those too.
Exactly.
But there's a whole lot more detail written in existence with people who had permission to continue his work, like Christopher Tolkien and companies, to be able to do that kind of stuff. So Robert Jordan does a fantastic job of I don't want to say over analyzing, but over producing things for us to talk about. Hey, but like he'll spend 3 pages describing scenery. I'm all for that. Not everybody is. I get that. But
Yeah.
that use, like, if you're not for that, just skip it. Like, literally, you'll still get the story. You just won't have to worry about that. Like, as a young kid, I skipped a lot of that stuff because I didn't care. Same thing when I was a young kid. I skipped poetry and Tolkien's work because I didn't get it.
Oh
I
man,
didn't
me
understand
and Pips will have some words with you, man.
I was a kid. Leave me alone. I don't skip it now. Obviously, I actually
The
enjoy
only
it.
poetry and songs I read aloud were Tolkien's. I'd be reading like Lord of the Rings, and a song comes, and I'd start singing it. And
Outside of music,
like,
and
why am I
outside
singing in the
of
middle of
Tolkien,
class?
I don't really care for poetry. Like lyricism and poetry are like hand in hand to me. But Tolkien's work, fantastic poetry and stuff. Like I love it. But I didn't as a kid, so I would skip it, and I could get through books a little bit quicker. So I could read more. That was my goal.
I mean, that's a bit more difficult to do with descriptions because
Well,
they're embedded in the text itself. Right? So you have to.
What I'm saying is, like, you're reading, you're like, oh, it's still describing. You just like kind of glance, so you skim through the page,
Yeah,
and get to the part where it's not. Like, it's necessary for the story, but it's not necessary. Sorry, I'm playing with my dog because he wants to play. It's necessary for the story to understand as a whole, but it's not necessary in little bits and pieces because I mean, if you're painting like the one scene with Ran in the orchard, all you have to know is that there's an orchard and it's not
and
doing well.
Rand's there. Yeah.
Ran goes up and it's doing well. Like that's all you got to know. It's pretty straightforward. But understanding the context, so knowing that the farmer's like, I don't know what we're gonna do, we're in trouble, and we got the hired hands trying to figure something out, and like what's going on, and all of a sudden Rand shows up, is like, hey, you're gonna need some extra help. And like, what do you mean? You're gonna need extra help, and it's just wandering off like a boss. Like that's something that's like that's helpful information to have. So you can give, but the problem is everyone thinks that all these viewers of Hollywood, books, whatever, are like TikTokers. Like they have the attention span of TikTok, which I obviously don't because I make like Sage, I talked to you for 6 hours straight. I've had all the streams gone 3+ hours. I obviously do not have that kind of a problem, which is probably why I enjoy the longer. Like everyone's like, John Wick's 3 hours is so long. I'm like, it was amazing. Like I don't care how make it longer. Like, I don't care, but for people who have like the shortened version, you could easily do like a full version. Like think of like Lord of the Rings and it's released but in reverse. So you release the extended and then you release the theatrical for people who can't handle the time periods. Like you could easily solve the problem. Like have them both simultaneously in the theater and be like, hey, you can go to the short one or you can go to the full one. I can guarantee you for a Lord of the Rings film, extended will always pack the theater more than the theatrical, even with normies.
Probably.
I would never pay for it. If they had released the extended versions, I would have hated the movies.
Damn.
If you did or didn't.
All the again, I respect what Jackson did. I think the theatricals are great movies, and for that reason, I don't pick them apart. But he made a lot of changes to those movies that I dislike, and especially in the extended editions. That's when I kind of start like you start seeing my, like the Elves at Helm Deep and all sorts of stuff like that. Like, it just like I could tolerate it and enjoy the 3 short ones, so to speak, a lot more because the pacing gets you through. You don't focus on so much the flaws, and some of the flaws don't exist. But when those extended editions come out, I've only ever watched the Return of the King extended edition once in my entire life because of how much I hate things to happen.
We're gonna have words after this, good sir. I watch the extended at least once a year. At least.
I love the Fellowship extended. It's really good. Even though Tom Bombadil's not in it, it's still really good. It starts to go off the rails of the crazy train in Two Towers extended. I mean, there were no Elves at Helm Deep, and there was a particular reason for that. But
yeah, but the Elves at Helm Deep, I don't think was an extended. That was also theatrical.
No, that's also in the theatrical. Yeah.
But you can gloss over in the theatrical because it's so paced so fast.
I couldn't.
I like just there, and you're like, okay, elves, whatever, and then the battle's over. Like the battle's like way longer in the extended, and you constantly are like, and in my head I'm constantly like, those $500 could be really useful defending Lothlorien for the armies of Sauron attacking it right now.
Yeah, but to be fair, they have
Yeah.
the hiddenness of the forest to their advantage, and lots of really high quality archers and a lot of
No,
archers.
there were not a lot of elves left. That 500 elves is probably one of the largest elven armies. There
That's
were
like
not
the
a lot
entirety of
them.
Lothlorien.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I'm saying from a perspective of like the population of Elvendom, like what they had for families and everything, with basically
there weren't a
everyone
lot left. By the time you get to the
Well,
war,
they're not. But the reason they're sending them is because like, hey, let's do the last hurrah. Like from a theatrical. I'm not saying from the book because obviously they didn't have it in the book, but from that perspective, they're not really like having to do too much. So they're basically already in the process of withdrawing. So
in the book,
them
Sauron
defending
is
it now.
attacking everywhere. He's not just attacking there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So-
yeah, but I'm saying like from the perspective of what we know in the theatrical and extended, we don't know that he's attacking everywhere. That's the problem. There was never it was never explained to the viewer that this is a big blow to the elves.
And that is my chief irritation with his adaptation is the entire War of the Rings seemed to have been edited out. You know.
Yeah, but my problem wasn't that they weren't in Lothlorien. My problem was that they were at Helm's Deep. That was my problem.
There was a huge like between the Sindar elves, the Sylvan elves, which are Legolas people over in Mirkwood, and the Sindarin, who were most surviving Sindarin were essentially Lothlorien because Celeborn was their ruler. Galadriel herself protected Lothlorien, right? Tolkien states only Sauron could have actually broken through there. But there was a huge war going across the region that the elves and some
dwarves were involved, the elves were involved, everybody was involved, which I understand because like that's why like the Rangers were up north protecting the Shire and everything from like Angmar's advances and stuff like that. Like all that makes perfect sense. My point was that the show or the movies didn't explain it, and if they're already cutting out things like Tom Bombadil and a whole bunch of other things from the books putting in the movies, they're not going to have time to go through and be like, then they everywhere else.
In the extension, they take the time with the army of the undead to show them attacking the port cities, right? And that's when it should have been ended.
I'm happy that they did that way because from the books they scare people away. They don't actually physically harm anyone.
Well, they helped break the siege of the port cities, which freed up the army of southern Gondor, which is what Aragorn took north, right?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Is like they freaked them out and got them out.
What should have come off those ships was the army of southern Gondor, not the Piranha army of the undead.
Yeah, that heads down. I would have loved that. But my point is that they're arguing in favor of we don't have enough time for these films because originally he wanted to do it in 2 films, all 3 books. And they're like, no, let's make this 3, which is a shocker because normally they go less, not more. But back then it was still not completely retarded. So they had to fit 3 films. And I'm like, well, how long can we make these? I'm like, well, extended are 4 hours and plus like I think Return of the King is like 4.5 hours or something, 4 hours and 49 minutes.
It's really long.
Which I'm completely fine with. I want it longer. I want a 10-hour release of each of the movies. That's what I want.
Again,
To be fair though, if they wanted to do the army of southern Gondor, then they would need a lot more setup, I think, to make that flow.
They
Aragorn's travels through the what is it, Dunharrow or whatever, like going through the mountains, getting the army of the dead, going down and then grabbing all of the troops, basically imitating the exact thing that they did with Theoden before the Dunharrow thing, where they get to that big tall thing with the zigzag and all the guys are down there waiting for 6,000 guys. Like 6,000 is what we got. And like, well, 6,000 is what we're running with because it's what we got.
Yeah. But in the film, they have like Aragorn talks with the ghosts. Then in the extended edition, there's a small tiny scene where they attack one ship. And then they all
ships there, but
they skip.
Yeah,
okay, fair. They just show them attacking real short, and then immediately after, the next time we see them is when they show up in Osgiliath, I think.
I gotta say, I was always curious on how an army.
So
of the dead,
if you want to, that's also a good question. How do the
army of the dead do anything to these guys? Because they can't physically interact with them. I mean, even if you were like terrified and you jumped into the water because undead were charging at you, that you'd still have to get the boat.
Well,
it's still sailing. You gotta get into the boat.
I mean, that they helped the army of southern Gondor break the siege. So even that fear effect of all of a sudden enemies running from their fortifications on your shore Because what happened was the Numenorian, the Black Numenorians, Umbarians, and several other of humans.
Yeah, no, I get that, but time-wise, showing that to make it makes sense that the army of Southern Gondor shows up in Osgiliath, showing
Did
that
they
would
have-
take a lot more time.
Did they have the mustering of the Rohirrim after Helm's Deep in the theatrical? I don't even remember. I haven't watched the theatrical since the theater, so.
Well, that's another thing. If they were going to put it instead of the army of the elves, they could have shown the war that there was more to what the Rohirrim were doing than just riding down Helm's Deep.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's true. But
that was the point. Is they could have shown Gandalf and
does
going
it make
around and
sense
finding
to
Éomer.
randomly show a bunch of Southern Gondor stuff when there's no main characters there?
Well, what you do is you have because what happened is Faramir was left in command of the army of Northern Gondor when Boromir left, and and had been totally devastated. And you could have an argument with him and Denethor where he says, "Look, I've been fighting this brother. I've been fighting this with the army of Northern Gondor for a decade now, trying to repel and have Denethor come back." Goes, and then mention, well, the army of Southern Gondor, the bigger army.
I even mentioned you could have a messenger show up and say, "My lord, here's the latest report on Southern Gondor."
Okay,
Yeah.
And
that
then
works.
that would at least let us know that there's an army down there.
Yeah.
And then when Aragorn goes through Dunharrow and comes down into Southern Gondor, they could have had him bring in, we had several characters from, because I'm pretty sure in the books they named some characters from down there, because I'm trying to remember the name of the knights that were down there.
Prince Imrahil.
Yeah, they have those guys down there, so you could easily have grabbed those guys, made them like a character similar to how we didn't have what's the guys from Rohan, the one that didn't get eaten, Glam, shoot, the guy who puts on Theoden's armor during the whole how he counted down the days.
Oh,
scene
okay.
right before.
Um,
You know what I'm talking about, the guy who
Yeah.
was the personal guard for Theoden. They gave him more personality than he would technically have. He's a character, I believe, in the books, but he wasn't up to the forefront like they made him. Like, he's given commands, so he's talked to, he's named, but he's not like a main player. So you do the same thing with like Prince Imrahil, and if anything, Prince Imrahil should be a main character in that regard. He'd be the Éomer for Gondor, essentially. And then him and Aragorn join forces, swing around, get rid of the Corsairs, get rid of all the other problems, and then swing up and attack. Then you'd have not only an epic army from Rohan, you'd also have an epic army from Southern Gondor, and just pancake these guys. And that would have been an even better.
That would have been perfect.
battle.
Yes.
But if it's the same thing with do we have these kind of things where the mustering of Rohirrim, was there a point to that? Because they gathered guys.
Probably
All
not.
you had to do is say, we've gathered 6,000 and moved on. Like, you didn't have to play it. They played it for a particular reason because they were setting up the Dunharrow thing. They were setting up Elrond showing up with the sword so that he could
And
take
that
it.
was
And then
another irritation. It wasn't.
then there's a whole lot of irritations.
Yeah. No, but
Like, you
that's
can't go to,
I consider those minor, to be honest.
it's minor in comparison to the overall. Like, the overall story, we get the point. We know what it is. It's at least the bare bones spine. Now, granted, I'm more aligned with Tolkien in terms of don't change things because it's not meant to be changed. You adapt it or don't. That's the point. I'm glad they did, but I would have preferred it much, 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 much.
Yeah,
more
I'm just saying with the 2-hour editions, the changes are much more easy for me to absorb and ignore to enjoy the movie.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
But and you go to Wheel of Time,
I just like
they're
longer
way too
films.
unrealistic.
Oh God, no, yeah.
It changes completely.
Like as an example, I will scream over the characterization of Denethor that they did in the Lord of the Rings films. That's 10 times better than anything they've done in this Wheel of Time destruction of characters. Like you know what I mean? Like at least the actor who played Denethor, I forget his name, he's a great actor, played it very well. You know what I mean?
Noble.
Yeah. And but like these actors, they're given such crap, so you can't even we didn't talk about this like way back at the beginning of this.
Denethor in the movies wasn't portrayed like Denethor in the books. They made him much eviler, which is sad because he was a sad, unfortunate man.
Well, he was broken, which he wasn't in the books. You know.
Well, in the books, he was weary, but he wasn't like falling apart, and he wasn't evil and trying to like be blatantly evil. Like that wasn't his thing. Yeah. So it's It didn't do him justice in the movies.
Yeah.
Although how they portrayed it in the movies was more for the normies.
Well, I'm just saying as a reference upon what they've done with Wheel of Time, the show, Wheel of Prime, like
Everything they do to these characters in the show as a change is way worse than what they did to Denethor, is what I'm saying. You know, like it's such. It's. I'm trying. I can't even.
The worst sin in Lord of the Rings is smaller than the smallest thing in Wheel on Prime. Hands down.
Oh,
There's not even a comparison.
By several magnitudes, probably even.
It doesn't.
I would say it's like an ant compared to like an asteroid. It's like, is the ant going to destroy the world? Probably not. Is the meteorite? Definitely is going to do it. So.
Yep.
Well, we're at the 3-hour mark. So, do you guys?
a 3-hour tour.
I can go on.
Okay. Well,
I
I
got nothing to do.
could, but my kid's coming home, so I want to go spend time with him. So
Children? What are these children you speak of?
Indeed. Yes.
he is the light of my life. because-
Wait, can you have a Trolloc babysit for your child?
Apparently, can you guarantee that the Trolloc won't eat the child?
Eh,
No. There's no guarantees, unless of course the Dark One's like, "Hey, don't eat this kid." Then you go like, "Okay." But we already know that Trollocs will try to eat children because Ulver. But yeah. Also, I think pretty sure it was implied, and that was one of the things I loved about Padon Fane. It was every time we got Padon Fane, there was the most gruesome, terrible things because it showed him as a villain. It wasn't like, oh, he just did a bad thing. Like back in Faldara, butchered people. Like absolutely butchered to the point where people committed suicide because they didn't want to just completely maim themselves, kill themselves in any way possible, just based off of what they seen. Not that it was directed at them, just what they seen.
Yeah.
That's a villain. And then they go out, they're like, okay, well, we go to this village, we're staking a Murdraw to thing. Oh, well, he's obviously strong enough to take on a Murdraw. The Murdraw's not going to oppose him for whatever reason. And then we're going to go to the place where he finds this woman and her child, and we get the graped aspect. And then from there, he goes on to throwing body parts into cook pots for Trollocs and stuff, which we knew vaguely about, but like we're getting descriptions of this. And it's just like, this shows me this guy's a bad guy. A lot of villains nowadays, they're just like, yeah, he did a bad thing once. It's on his rap sheet.
well, no, they're just
I don't
like.
care about his rap
I
sheet.
know.
I care about what he actually did. What did he do? He did a lot of bad things.
Villains
like-
nowadays are just climate activists, really.
Yeah, pretty much. And I'm just like, I don't want to see this stuff on screen. Like, I don't want to see someone get raped. I don't want to see people getting necessarily butchered and thrown into a crook pot. Cook pot, not crook pot. Same thing.
A crock pot. The Trollocs use a giant crock pot to slow cook them.
Basically. Well, I said crook pot, and I'm thinking like,
Yeah, no, that makes no sense.
it doesn't make any sense either. Unless it's a cook pot for criminals, then it makes sense.
That
But-
seems oddly specific.
Well, I mean, if you argue that Trollocs are crooks, then it's a crook pot. There you go. But I don't want to see them. Like, I'm not like, oh boy, I can't wait for that scene. But in seeing them, it brings out that emotion that says, this dude's bad. This is bad. Like, it's like the emotional thing. Like, for those who go and see Sound of Freedom, it's an emotionally draining thing for somebody who doesn't want to see children in positions of like that, like being used and abused. They don't want to see these, like, we don't want to see it, but we want to see the redemption where the kids get freed. We want to see the bad guys suffer. We want to see those things.
Is the scene gratuitous or necessary for the story? That's how you have to balance, right?
Yeah.
So
The
Sound of
thing is,
Freedom,
like,
those were necessary for the story.
Would you argue that a scene in the show, like if they saying that they did the show correctly, which will never happen, but assuming they did, would you say that a scene where Padon Fane grapes a woman and potentially her child, would you say that would be necessary to the story because it's character development, or would
I
you
would
say
say
it's
no.
gratuitous?
Like if you allude to it,
That's fine.
And it kind of begins.
it depends how much to go.
Robert Jordan is he never goes into like the sexual stuff. Like
Yeah.
I like that because I don't.
As long as they keep that in, right? Like that, and they don't go
You have
into
to kind
too
of
much
allude to
detail.
it once or twice to get to.
And
Because you
it's
have to make
probably
Padon
fine.
Fane like like he's really, really evil. You have to portray that
But we get the illusion, or they allude to the fact that he not only grapes the mom, but he also potentially grapes the child. That's not a cool scene.
No.
I mean, it's a well-written scene. It's not a cool scene. It's not something we want to see. But would you say that's necessary or gratuitous? I'd say Game of Thrones sex scenes were gratuitous. Like almost none of them. Maybe you could probably argue for
maybe a few.
of them. You could probably argue for a small portion of them to be part of.
I'd say the first one, the tower, is pretty necessary.
Well, the thing is
necessary because something happens according to it. But I'm saying, like in all the brothel scenes and all the naked people, all the orgies, are those gratuitous or are they necessary to the story? I'm like, maybe if they were in the background, like they're going to a brothel to have a secret meeting because they don't want people to follow them. They want to throw them off the trail, and that's the family getting home.
I think they said those were in so that they could do exposition while not scaring off the other people.
Well, they were in the show because they were making a soap opera, not a real adaptation.
Yeah,
that's also fair.
They're doing it because it's pretty gratuitous. Game of Thrones was heavily gratuitous on virtually everything they were doing because that's what draws people. That's HBO's MO.
Yeah,
but if you're like,
but the book is not gratuitous.
I mean, I argue there's some scenes that aren't necessary, but I don't remember too much about it. I read them way back in the day.
Yeah,
and maybe they didn't. But there's a lot of scenes where like you got the incest scene, and you're like, aside from shoving Brandon out the window, there's not really a need for it. We already got the point that they're incestuous. Like you don't need beyond that. So once it's been established, you don't have to keep doing it. But when they keep doing it, it becomes gratuitous, in my opinion. Now, if there's part of the story that's attached to that particular scene, like they get caught by somebody, that's one thing. But if it's just like, hey, let's go bang for no reason, like it's gratuitous. All the scenes that I could think of in Wheel of Time, the books, all the scenes have a purpose. Rand gets with Avienda, that begins their relationship. Rand gets with Min, that begins their relationship. Rand gets with Elaine, eventually, aside from obviously the kissing in the corner. It's a part of their more intimate relationship.
Well, Jordan's a better writer than Martin. I don't think anyone's arguing with that.
Huh?
Jordan's a better writer than Martin. I'm not going to argue with that.
People are like, Game of Thrones is awesome. I'm like, child's play.
Well, I'm not going to say hands down.
I mean,
I'm going to say like
not serious.
Like I would call Jordan on my tier 2 of writers, So
I would put Tolkien at the top, as he deserves. I'd probably put C.S. Lewis at the top too, because he did a fantastic job, even though his target audience is younger. He did a fantastic job in his world, and his world building is amazing. I'd put RJ a step below, but he'd still be up there. I'd put Martin like 4th or 5th tier at best. I just wasn't impressed by his work, and his work was very repetitive, where it's just like there's a lot of murders, there's a lot of sex, there's a lot of this, there's a lot of that, but it's very repetitive of those features.
My tiers kind of get bigger.
I personally really like medieval fantasy stuff, so
I do
just
too,
take it.
I didn't feel like
I'll take it.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's like the Sword of Truth series. There's whatever that MTV Shannara Chronicles one. Like, there's other ones. Like I grew up on like Dragonlance and stuff, so I had my fantasy covered. And I wouldn't say necessarily any of the Dragonlances were like peak art in the book industry, but I would definitely say it had its charm. It had cool stories. They're not too crazy. They're not too big. They're very, very small books. It's like an adult version of the Hardy Boys, I guess. Is what I remember them at. But the characters are cool, and I really want to get into like Baldur's Gate and stuff because I've been playing the Divinity games for a long time, and I kind of want to play Baldur's Gate 3 now because it's now that I'm familiar with the Divinity Original Sin games, I want to be able to play the other games like Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights and all that stuff, and be able to, I can actually enjoy these, because for the longest time I hated turn-based. Final Fantasy ruined me. I hated turn-based so much. Like, let me act faster.
That's fair.
But yeah, I would just say for authors and stuff, if you're going to world build, you at least have to make it understandable. And for a director or showrunner to show up and not do that, they failed, in my opinion. Like well, I mean, it's probably not even my opinion. That's an objective fact. They failed because people have more questions going in than you gave them answers. Now, keep in mind, there are some answers that can be left open. Like Robert Jordan did this on an awful lot, where it's kind of just like, was it this or this? Did this leave it? Sometimes it was because he just forgot he had that line. Sometimes it left it open and it became ingenious because now we have to make up our own thing. And sometimes that question that was left open gets answered later on completely on accident. And then we just like, oh, okay, well, case closed. There are some things like the flicker flies thing I still argue with Pips about and Dane, but there's different opinions. I like the ability to theorize, but I don't think it should be the entire thing. You shouldn't be theorizing about every little aspect. It should be about specific things that don't necessarily hold a lot of weight to it, because like the flicker thing didn't hold crazy amounts of weight. It's not like the book can't end unless that's answered.
I mean,
there
you
are
don't
things
really
like-
see much of the multiverse ever again.
But if you see it's outside of like portals.
Yeah. Okay, but
If you have
it's not the
assassins
same.
try to kill Rand and they're not from the Dark One, them being there requires an answer. We got to know, is it the lords of that particular city that they're in, country they're in? Is it somebody from outside of it trying to make it look like it's them? Like that's when you get the political intrigue aspect. Those things need to be answered because it's not the Dark One. If it's Gray Man, they're like, oh, one of the Forsaken or the Dark One tried to have him assassinated. That's a pretty cut and dry, simple. But when you're like, Rand's taking over Kyrian and potentially a Kyrian lord tries to have him assassinated, kind of important information to know who caused that, because it's like, well, now he shouldn't feel safe because people are trying to have him assassinated. I mean, he'd feel safe because the Aiel is going to stop anybody, but you should feel like a Greyman will get past Aiel.
Yeah.
So like if we're like, hey, something's out of whack, or I should say it would get past most Aiel. There are obviously instances where Aiel might catch them, but they're literally magical beings to be able to like avoid it. It takes a special that's one of the things I hate about Gawain's arc, where like he's like, oh, I spotted the shadow dude, and was like, how? You haven't done anything of any particular craziness outside of train with some orders a little bit. That's literally it. You didn't even finish your training, for crying out loud. Whatever. But it's Gawain. Everyone hates him. But do you guys have anything else before we call it good?
I mean, we roasted some of those stupid comments. We did good there.
Exactly.
We added some quality content after that, so we did good there.
I think a decent amount of quality.
We fended off the Woman of Womanetheron, who you guys summoned by accident. You know.
Well, actually, technically, Prophet summoned them. Technically,
Exactly. Yeah, we're innocent.
Yeah.
innocent to proving guilty, and you can't prove me guilty. Ha.
Exactly.
Glad they showed up though.
Brief question. Okay, we don't have to go into this, but
All right, brief. We've got 2 seconds. Go.
if
Time's
there's
up.
any one thing they did in the show that correct, like meaning some change they made that would have made sense in an adaptation, is there any one thing?
Everything.
I can only think of one thing,
questions.
which is making Egwene a native Taviran as well, to sort of cut some storyline out down the line. Because if you notice,
makes sense.
well,
I don't think that
if you're going to
works.
cut stuff out, because like with Rand, Matt, and
Yeah,
Perrin,
but that's putting extra stuff in. That's
Yeah,
The
cutting
thing is-
something out to shorten the
seems
story
weird.
is different than cutting something out and then
no.
adding something
What
else.
I'm saying
in.
is making them Taviran for the TV show means they could cut out parts of their storyline because they could just hand wave it. In other words, they could just make them natural prodigies at the power, so they learn everything in Tarvalon in like one episode because they're Taviran. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, no, okay, that
Useful
I
tool if
suppose
you're
that
going
makes
to
sense.
consolidate storyline, which because we know that in the book he uses that with
Yeah.
Rand, Matt, and
But
I'm just saying it's a useful.
would you
tool
say
to
that's
change.
a good change? Is it a good change to introduce something
Is
so
it a
that you
No.
can cut
They
out
couldn't-
later parts of
Is
the
it a
story?
change they couldn't change elsewise? Like,
I'm saying that if you're going to do an adaptation, that you're not going to do the full 15 seasons of 20 episodes a shot.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, that's fair.
first off,
know-
we know they're not going to do the tower split because that would make women look weak, and they can't do that.
That's fair.
They're not going to split the tower. We're not going to have the Gareth Bryn branch off. We're not going to have. We might not even get any of them, but there's going to be a lot of things we're not going to be able to get from this that would make any shape or form
Yeah.
halfway decent. Like Whatever
we
you
need a
cut out, you
different
have to
way
have
for
somebody
Egwene
that's
to
already
ascend.
established in the storyline to explain something else. But having Egwene be a Taviran makes literally no sense because there's no purpose for it.
In the context of Jordan's story, correct. I'm saying for the purpose of doing like a 5 or 6 season adaptation of 15 books, is a
There's at
useful
least-
tool.
There's
It
at
could
least
be-
10 other ways that would make more sense and that would not take away the importance of, because if it's like Taviran are supposed to be special, you get 3 of them. That's a big deal that there's 3. Having a 4th just makes it even a bigger deal, especially if they're all coming from the same video or same village video.
Same video, yeah.
Consolidate down a lot of. You could handwave a lot of stuff that happens in the need in the Queen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think you can just handwave that in different ways without needing
There's
to
at least 10 ways you could get rid of them outside of that. So
I mean, it sort of depends on what exactly which
I'm
parts
not
you
sold
want
on it,
in your 5-season
I'm not told.
adaptation.
I'm saying it was
but
a good change to make. I'm saying in the context of trying to do what they did with this crap show.
if you intend
it'd be a poor
to
attempt.
make certain changes that need that, then yeah, of course, that makes it a beneficial change for your adaptation specifically.
Like it's
Otherwise-
not believable for a Queen to become the
That's
Admiral
not.
without the split, for example.
Yeah,
But we know
that's
she's going
fair.
to become it in the
It
show.
could be. You
If
could
you
just
go-
make her really, really powerful, and then they just vote her in.
Exactly, yeah.
Like there's ways you can do it. That it's a
Be
lot.
training in the power
You
and
can
being
even have it
suddenly
as
super
Rand.
good does
Like,
not
since
require being
they've already
Taviran.
Since they've already put Rand in Tarvalon, you can just have his presence be there, be the Taviran power that causes her to get into power.
We already
And-
know
and
that
it's very
Egwene.
much cause that to happen.
Well, do we know that?
That what?
Let's assume that Egwene does indeed get captured by the Ascension in this version. Then they could just say that the training she undergoes there suddenly makes her super powerful. I guess, maybe, I don't know.
But she's already technically super powerful.
Yeah, but now she's even more super powerful, and that makes it worthy of Amelin. Maybe, I don't know.
Shark asked, "Don't you guys see that Dead Space and Callisto Protocol are very familiar?" I am not familiar with Callisto Protocol. I am familiar with Dead Space. I love Dead Space.
Callisto Protocol is a game.
It's a newer game, I think.
Newer,
I don't know-
which
I don't know if it's been out
maybe
already, but
there's some weird psychological stuff happening in there. I don't know.
well, so is Dead Space. But yes, you just don't know it to the end of the game. But yeah, I think we'll go ahead and end it there because my dog is going berserk. If you can't hear him, and
Yeah, okay.
my kid's about to come bum rushing down the stairs, so I need to go say hi to him. So, Matt, what you got going on?
I'll be recording a video for episode 3 of 30 Coins, which is a horror TV show I would suggest everyone watch. And I'll be recording my book review of Eye of the World probably this evening. Plus, I'm working on reviews for like more Bleach episodes. I finally have access to the next few episodes, and it's about what I got going on.
Cool.
Oh, and on this Thursday, I'll be on Roman and the Empire show where we discuss Dark City.
Nice.
Interesting.
How about you, Sage? Hit us.
I have literally nothing to do in the nearby future. So
That's when he always shows up to these things. He's like, I don't got anything to do. I'll just go on the stream.
exactly, yeah.
It's he's the pity joint. I guess I'll help them. Those guys are useless without me. Well, hopefully one of these days you'll actually have a channel, and we can point.
Yeah, no idea what I would do then.
I guess I'm going to have to point out Gadfly and everybody else because I think Gadfly had mentioned a little bit earlier, but he has a couple things coming up. I don't remember what they were. Sorry, Gadfly. If you see this, comment in the down belowsies and let people know what you're doing and what you're up to so that we can get people over there to participate. I think he's on a couple different streams. And then Prophet's probably got something coming up. He always does. And then Arterian has an official YouTube channel. Let me go back up to show it off. I'm going to pick his original one if I can. This one. So you can probably just click on his thing and get to him. I don't know how else to get to him other than clicking on him because I'll have to do that too. But he has an official YouTube channel. So
You link
head over
that
there and give us a look.
that we put in the Theron cover, Bardcore cover. There's actually a YouTube channel called Bardcore where a guy covers in like medieval style heavy metal and rock songs.
Oof. I like
It's really
that.
good. He's really good.
I do like that. I remember the Reflections of Sound is a YouTube channel that's a Spanish group that worked with Robert Jordan on several different songs from Wheel of Time, and that's what Robert Jordan, I guess, made the official sounds for it. So I personally enjoy them a lot, but everybody might have their own different taste. But that's allegedly the original soundtrack, the original soundtrack for it, even though there is an actual CD out there somewhere for the music. Why they made the soundtrack without anything to attach it to, I don't know. They just made a soundtrack for a book for some reason. Been trying to find it for a long time. It's really hard to get your hands on. But I guess for me, I just released another video today before the stream, which obviously everyone in the Council of Light just totally roasts me for because I am terrible at editing, and there are things I don't know. So
I gotta watch your video this evening.
Well, it's 30 minutes of just, shake your head at me on basically. I think Sage watched it all the way, or maybe he stopped because he
Well, no, I didn't quite finish it in time. I'm at the 21-minute mark. Then we had this stream.
Well,
So
at least we now know what you're going to do after the stream.
exactly. Yeah.
Hopefully you're finding it entertaining. I was
Oh
trying
yeah,
to be kind of
it's
silly on
certainly
purpose.
funny.
Yeah, I was
maybe
trying to go for that
not
because
for
that's
the
the one thing I have
reasons-
going for me is I have humor. That's
Nice.
about it. Everything else, not so much. So, all right. Thanks everybody for coming to the stream and hanging out for the 3 hours and 20 minutes. We'll catch you on the flip side, and walk in the light, my friends.